Good evening, President O'Brien, members of the Governing Board, Superintendent Finch, and special guests. Honorees, after I read about your award, please come forward to Superintendent Dr. Finch to retrieve your certificate. Our Governing Board President will give you an extraordinary DVUSD logo pin, and each of our Governing Board members will congratulate you on your extraordinary accomplishment. You will have your photo taken so we can share your good news in local media and on social media. We begin tonight with the 2022 Superintendent Art Purchase Awards. Since 2005, DVUSD has purchased student artwork for the purpose of curating a permanent art collection. For 2022, Dr. Finch had the honor of selecting 5 pieces of art from the District Art Showcase that ran at the Outlets at Anthem in April. The pieces, currently in temporary frames, are on display here in the Governing Boardroom. The artwork will be professionally framed in the coming weeks. You may have noticed last year's winning artwork currently on display in the Governing Boardroom lobby as you entered the building. That is where this year's winning art will be displayed starting this summer through all of 22-23 school year before finding a permanent location inside the district office. It is my pleasure now to introduce the artists and the works of art that were selected. The first piece of art selected by Dr. Finch was a painting titled Garden of Eden, created by Boulder Creek High School senior Maddie Lowe. Maddie's goal for this painting was to express her best friend's personality through the painting, and she included the M&Ms because it's her friend's favorite candy. She created this artwork from a photo of her friend, and it was done with oil paints. All told, it took Maddie more than 50 hours to complete it. She is currently enrolled in West Meck for cosmetology, and her future goals include opening her own salon. A special thank you goes out to Boulder Creek High School instructor Jason Lohmeyer, and congratulations to award-winning artist Maddie Lowe.
Right here in the middle. There we go. You wonder where it is.
And is Mr. Lohmeyer here? He is. Mr. Lohmeyer, come on up. We'd like for you to be in a picture.
Sure. Where do you want?
Just standing right next. Oh, one more. All right, congratulations. The next piece Dr. Finch selected is a color drawing called Self-Expression, created by Barry Goldwater High School junior Francisco Pantoja. Francisco's goal for this piece was to make something that was different from an ordinary portrait. So he took a picture of himself on the school bus on the way home and edited the picture into an infrared to know where to put the colors. His future plans include getting a full-ride scholarship to a good art college and to make art his job. He's already doing that through commissions for people and sharing his art on Instagram, where he has more than 1,000 followers. Francisco refers to himself as a self-taught artist, but credits his instructor, Mrs. Marchena, for helping him grow his skills and says she's a big reason for where he's at now. Thank you, Barry Goldwater High School art instructor Jessica Marchena, and congratulations to award-winning artist Francisco Pantoja. All right, Mrs. Marchena, please join your student. Do not hide, Miss Wordway. Next up, from Deer Valley High School, a black and white drawing titled The Honorable, created by junior Gloria Young. For this piece, Gloria really challenged herself because at the time that she created the drawing, she had limited knowledge in the charcoal media. To create this piece, she used the grid method to accurately sketch the subject of the picture onto the paper. She spent a lot of time making sure the shadows and lights of the picture were as realistic as possible. Her future plans are simply to keep drawing to her heart's content for as long as she desires. She draws to have fun and breathe life into her thoughts. Gloria believes that taking breaks from creating art is an important part of the process, as art can come naturally to oneself as life goes on. Special thanks goes out to Deer Valley High School art instructor Lauren Miller, and congratulations to award-winning artist Gloria Young. Gloria could not be with us tonight, but we would like to ask her art instructor, Lauren Miller, who is here, to accept the certificate and pin on her behalf. Yeah, she'll make sure it gets to the right place. All right. Next up, from Mountain Ridge High School, a black and white drawing titled Spotted, created by junior Emily Cosson. Emily's goal for this piece was just to be excited about experimenting with something new. She didn't have high expectations because it was her first time using charcoal as a medium. She started off gridding the leopard to make sure everything was proportional. Then she made small charcoal strokes, square by square, until it was finished. She was happy with how it turned out and seeing how she could bring the animal to life. Next year, Emily plans to enjoy her senior year and to continue to grow as a person. Special thanks to Mountain Ridge High School art instructor Stephanie Ducarme, and congratulations to award-winning artist Emily Cosson. All right, and Ms. Ducarme, come on up. Which side would you like? The other, that side, yeah. Congratulations. Our final Superintendent's Art Purchase Award is a ceramic piece titled Manny from Sandra Day O'Connor High School senior Elijah O. Elijah's goal for this piece was to create a realistic and proportional elephant sculpture. To do that, he created 2 pinch pots and stuck them together to form the general shape of the body. He then made a 3rd pinch pot to form the head. Next, he attached the legs, trunk, and ears. He then added the final details to perfect the shapes, added texture, and painted it with acrylic paint to emphasize the textural quality. Elijah is first in his graduating class at OHS, was a captain of the wrestling team, loves playing guitar, going to church, and of course, loves making art. His future plans include getting his real estate license and attending college to study business. A special thank you goes out to Sandra Day O'Connor High School art instructor Melissa Niscala, and congratulations to award-winning artist Elijah O. And Ms. Niscala, you're on deck. And all of our other student artists, you're on deck to come back up for a photo. All right, Elijah, stay right there. And I would like to ask all of our other art winners to come back up for one quick photo. Maddie, Francisco, Emily, come on up. We should have 4. There we go. All right. All right. All right. Congratulations, artists. All right. At our next 2 awards ceremonies, we will recognize the 43 students from our CTE programs who are state champions in their field of study. We begin with our Educators Rising state champions. Educators Rising is a national organization that helps students explore teaching as a potential career path. From Boulder Creek, Ava Mitchell won the state championship for early childhood education spotlight on special education. For this award, Ava had to schedule and shadow a special education DVUSD teacher, fill out a job shadowing form, make a video, and write a research paper. Her work wowed the judges, and she captured first place in her category. Her future plans include becoming a special ed teacher. Our HR department would like you to call, please. We've got openings. Congratulations, Boulder Creek High School senior and Educators Rising state champion, Ava Mitchell. Yeah. Yeah. Can you interview right now? And that goes to all these Educator Rising. And is Miss Manley Medic here? Yep, you're on deck. All right, and we'll get one more photo with the Educators Rising teacher leader. All right, congratulations. Our next 3 Educators Rising state champions are from Mountain Ridge High School. Mountain Ridge Educators Rising earned the coveted Gold Chapter Award after completing several projects, leadership activities, and community service, including collecting more than 2,500 books for 2 of our Title I schools in Deer Valley. All of that work helped them earn this award. Mountain Ridge joins just 4 other high schools in Arizona, earning the coveted Gold Chapter distinction. So congratulations to Mountain Ridge on this extraordinary achievement. Now on to Mountain Ridge High School's 3 state champions. Daphne Foster earned first place in exploring non-core teaching subjects and is the recipient of a scholarship from the University of Arizona. Daphne shadowed sociology teacher Mrs. Rochelle Estes to explore the life of a teacher of an elective class, and in doing so, found a passion for the subject. After shadowing Mrs. Estes, Daphne created a presentation about her experience to share with the judges at competition. She did all of this while also serving as vice president of the Mountain Ridge Educators Rising chapter. Next year, as a senior, Daphne will be interning with an elementary school teacher to further her exploration of a teaching career. Congratulations to Mountain Ridge High School junior and Educators Rising champion, Daphne Foster. Oh, at the end. Yep. All right, congratulations. And don't go far, we will be doing a group photo. All right, as a sophomore, Isabella Gwynn earned first place in exploring support service careers. Bella spent extensive time with the Media Center Specialist Librarian, Ms. Diane Milliken, learning about the importance of her position and the support she provides the Mountain Ridge teachers and students. After spending time working with Ms. Milliken, Bella conducted an interview and presented her findings to the judges. As a junior next year, Bella plans to continue into her third year of education professions and her second year in Educators Rising. Congratulations to Mountain Ridge High School sophomore and Educators Rising champion, Isabella Gwynn. Soraya Otero Cermeño earned first place in lesson planning and delivery fine arts. Soraya worked with Mrs. Mary Gordon, theater teacher at Mountain Ridge, and designed a lesson plan to teach Mrs. Gordon's students, who are Soraya's peers. Her lesson plan was read by the judges, and Soraya provided judges with a video of her teaching the lesson. As a result, the judges were impressed with her advanced teaching skills, earning her first place. Next year, as a senior, Soraya will continue in the Education Professions program and will intern at an elementary school. Congratulations to Mountain Ridge High School junior and Educators Rising champion, Soraya Otero Cermeño. All right, Soraya, stay right there. Isabella, Daphne, and Miss Moya, please come up for a photo. We'll do a quick group photo for Mountain Ridge. Congratulations. Our final set of CTE awards tonight belong to students in HOSA, or Future Healthcare Professionals, from Mountain Ridge and Sandra Day O'Connor High Schools. HOSA is an international student organization recognized by the U.S. Department of Education and the Health Science Education Division of ACTE. HOSA's twofold mission is to promote career opportunities in the healthcare industry and to enhance the delivery of quality healthcare to all people. The Mountain Ridge students become HOSA, two Mountain Ridge students became HOSA champions this year. Aprame Akaraju and Tanvi Konda competed as a team in the Bioscience Medical Innovation GB Neurobots competition. Their preparation included creating a new medical innovation of their own design that could lead to an advancement in medicine or the delivery of healthcare. They developed a display and prototype, and they recorded a video demonstration of their vision of the innovation. Judges liked what they saw, and they advanced the team to round 2, where they gave a 7-minute presentation and took questions from the judges. Aprame could not be here this evening as he is currently in Atlanta competing in the DECA International Conference. He's very passionate about both computers and business and loved preparing for the medical innovation category, designing a prototype as well as figuring out research costs and other business-related expenses for their innovation. Tanvi plans to stay in HOSA next year and compete in ILC for medical innovation. Her career goal is to become a CRNA, a certified registered nurse anesthesiologist, by getting her bachelor's in nursing at college and specializing in anesthesia later on in life. Her current dream college is UCLA, but she would still love to attend in her home state as well. Congratulations to HOSA state champions from Mountain Ridge, sophomore Aprame Akaraju and junior Tanvi Konda. And is Mrs. Rogers here? She is. You're on deck for a photo. Three days. 4, yeah. Broken ankle. 3-millimeter displacement. You'd be interested in this. Yeah. Okay. All right. Oh, will you take the other certificate to your student? That'd be great. And a pin after the picture. Oh, hold on. Hang on. Okay. Thank you. All right, congratulations. Our first Sandra Day O'Connor Eagle to bring home a championship at the HOSA state competition is senior Paige Kingsley, who won first place in the sports medicine competition. The competition covers anatomy, joint mobility, and taping skills. During the competition, students must properly perform randomly selected sports medicine skills within a certain time frame. To prepare for competition, Paige had to learn and practice ankle, shoulder, wrist, and Achilles taping and memorize the anatomy of the skeletal and muscular systems. She placed first with her regional online test score, and her in-person performance score was higher than the other competitor scores. She plans to continue pursuing her passion for health science and attend ASU in the fall, majoring in nursing and minoring in kinesiology, following her Sandra Day O'Connor High School graduation this year. Congratulations, HOSA first place sports medicine champion, Paige Kingsley. All right. Congratulations. And Paige will be calling you back up for a group photo in just a minute. All right. Oh, and to conclude the celebration of our extraordinary CTE state champions, we celebrate twin sisters, juniors at Sandra Day O'Connor High School, Arpana and Darshana Shrapati. The duo competed in HOSA's career display competition and won first place. The competition requires participants to research a career of interest, create a display board of associated career materials, and give an oral presentation communicating the career information to others. Arpana and Darshana chose the tele-ICU profession to research and present. They learned a tele-ICU physician manages and coordinates care with other medical staff to evaluate the condition, diagnose, and provide treatment for critically ill patients, all virtually through a remote setting. The girls conducted extensive research on the profession, as well as connected with a local telehealth ICU physician who provided insight into the profession in order to craft both their oral presentation and display board. Both girls plan to follow in the footsteps of their research with aspirations to attend medical school and become healthcare professionals. Congratulations to HOSA's Healthcare Display State Champions from Sandra Day O'Connor, Arpana and Darshana Shrapati. Are Ms. Patella or Ms. Woodward in the room? No. In just a moment, and Paige will need you back up for a group photo. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. There you go. Thank you, Gary. Yep. And Paige, come on back up. We'll do a group photo for Sandra Day. Oh, no, for both. Yep, yep. It's all good. Oh, hang on. I'm sorry. I have the wrong background. Go ahead and use that one. Sorry. Sorry. All right. Congratulations. We had hoped tonight to present the Arizona School Public Relations Association Copper Medallion Award earned by our extraordinary Communications and Community Engagement Department, but unfortunately that's going to be postponed to the second award ceremony in May. But Dr. Finch did want me to share that the Communications Department is still in the lead for DVUSD Department of the Year. Thank you. Thank you. That concludes tonight's awards and recognition. The regularly scheduled governing board meeting begins at 7.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to call the regular governing board meeting for Tuesday, April 26, 2022 to order at 7:06 p.m. Please let the roll call show that everyone is in attendance, and if you will join me for the Pledge of Allegiance and then a moment of silence.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, can we have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
And a second. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, please say nay. Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. Okay, we are going to start with our safe and healthy school report, and for that we will go to Dr. Zerbach.
Okay, good evening, President O'Brien, members of the board, Dr. Finch, and community. This evening, we will continue with another Safe and Healthy Schools report, and I will pause just for a second, President O'Brien, to see if we need to get it up on the screen. All right, perfect. Okay, and I'm joined with Mr. Warner with me here this evening as well, as we will cover some information about some of our safety drills towards the end of the presentation, and so he'll join me in that part. So for our agenda, much of this is familiar to you. We will cover the most recent community transmission metrics, which look very good. We will also talk about the termination of the emergency orders. That was big update for us, which occurred at the end of March. We will remind folks of the COVID-19 testing opportunities, also of some vaccination opportunities. Talk very briefly about the conclusion of this school year and the startup of the next school year. I did this for the PTA presidents, and so I think it would be valuable for those tuning in to hear. Then we will briefly again touch on some school safety drill information and then take some questions. Okay, so for the epi curve data, you can see that we remain very low, and if everyone could knock on wood, right, something there, that is a very good thing for all of us, as we know how much smoother the world is in general when the COVID numbers are lower. So those numbers translate into a low community transmission for us right now. You see the new rankings that they are taking from the CDC. This again is reflected on the next slide, which shows the age level epi curve. Again, this is for children ages 6 to 18, which comprise the majority of the students in schools. And this, just like the other epi curve on the previous slide, remains very low. For our own internal dashboard, again, as I have said numerous times, our district mirrors what the overall epi curve shows us, and so that remains true. We updated our dashboard yesterday, and I believe our most recent count is 5, which shows you here on this particular slide. And so percentage-wise, that's 0.01% across our district. And so we believe that our numbers will maintain relatively low to finish out the school year. So one important update is the termination of the emergency orders. And so this occurred towards the end of March. This was from Governor Ducey, also with the input of Arizona Department of Health Services, which wrote a communication to Governor Ducey articulating various points about the state of Arizona pandemic. And so with that termination comes things like the requirements for an outbreak, those are no longer required by the schools, and there are other pieces to that. And so really, with this termination, it allows us to begin planning for a normal school year, if you will, without some of the COVID items that both Jenna and myself and other folks at the district level have needed to do for the prior 2 school years. Okay, COVID-19 testing. Because the numbers have remained low, Maricopa County is no longer to put a COVID-19 vendor at our district office location. And this is okay because we really have had very few folks that have come to our testing. Some days there's nobody that shows up. And so we do not see this as a barrier. We will continue to provide the links to the COVID testing opportunities on our website. And then, as I have communicated before, we still have a good supply of home test kits. And these test kits are available not only for our students, but for our staff as well. And we'll continue to receive shipments of the home test kits. So that was covered today in the county health webinar, where they talked about how those will be provided into next school year for schools as well. Okay, vaccination information. The county partnership that we have had at Constitution Elementary for all of our schools will continue. So this will be an opportunity for parents to bring their children at no cost, where they can get not only the COVID vaccination if they so choose, in addition, any other of the vaccines that they offer. So we'll continue to make sure this is publicized for our families. And this again will occur in the summer. Okay, for the end of school year 22 this year and the beginning of next year, there's a couple things I want to highlight. First of all, with this year, our spring athletics, the teams are doing fantastic. We are having a banner season. We have multiple opportunities for a state champion here. And so that is something that has been a very positive part to our second half of the school year. Also related to athletics, we have our Pursuing Victory with Honor ceremony, which is next week, where we will recognize some of our top student athletes and staff as well. Spring Fine Arts, this evening you saw in the awards ceremony 4 of our fine arts students who are here, just amazing talent. And so not only there, but in our various plays, musicals, our dance shows, our band, the jazz band, all of our different groups who are performing, they just truly are demonstrating the fine talent that we have here in the district. Our promotion and graduation ceremonies, this is the one that probably receives the most interest from us. And so, as I have communicated out at a couple of different occasions, these ceremonies will look like they did before COVID. Summer program planning, Dr. Galligan, Dr. Chunas, and others at this table have been very busy planning for various programs for our students. And so that is in full swing. And then our Innovation Center, Mr. Miglarino, Ms. Smock, and Dr. Galligan, again, working very diligently on that. We got a little preview, and it is going to be spectacular. And then as far as our school year 23 and the startup, again, related to the previous slide where I talked about the termination of the emergency order, this tells us or informs us now that our COVID-19 safety plan will really have very few, if any, restrictions. And the only restrictions I can see right now is there may be some components related to the nurse's office where they still have access to some components of PPE, and there may be some types of procedures that they're doing, in particular in the nurse's office, but outside of that, I don't see too much at this time, but I will certainly keep the board updated and in board updates and through additional Safe and Healthy Schools reports. The second bullet point is the virtual and in-person opportunities. And I thought this was an important point because although we will not have many barriers for us, again, if any at all, I still anticipate that there will be some virtual opportunities for the community. And so that will be partly due to the learned pieces in terms of from the pandemic as far as when does it benefit us to have virtual opportunities? When is it more convenient, perhaps for our parents or other members of the community? So some of those opportunities may very well likely stay. And then, of course, having in-person opportunities as well for some of those times that we did not in the prior school years. Inspiration Mountain, you are well aware, is moving along, and that will be very exciting. And then, as I mentioned before as well, I did let the PTA know that they should be planning for normal operations for school year 23. Okay, our next part then will cover school safety drills. So I wanted to remind the board and those who are tuning in that we do have requirements for the schools in terms of some of the drills that are performed. So just going down the bullet points here, our evacuation drills are done on a monthly basis. And so the most common one there is a fire drill. A fire drill is a type of evacuation drill. Our lockdown drills are to be completed twice a year. And as it states there, it's once in each semester. Lockouts twice a year. And then these drills, when they are performed, they need to be completed and they need to be logged. And then you can see a bullet point as well about the ERP plans in terms of who influenced those plans and how they were developed. And each school has an ERP. As well, we do have an incident command system that is utilized. You can see here that in the ERP, there are roles and responsibilities that are contained in the ERP for incident command system. These are some of the positions that are included in that particular system. And then as we put, there are FEMA certifications for this, and then we do practice tabletop exercises. Okay, and then that brings me to our second to last slide. With respect to the recent evacuation that was not a drill that occurred at Boulder Creek. We are very much aware that there was some concern from the staff and from the community about what happened last Thursday. And so Mr. Warner, Mrs. Frank, and myself, we did debrief with the administration earlier this morning with other members of the school safety team and other support personnel that were on the campus. And so we were able to hear from each of the members that were present their perspective as to what occurred, what they saw, what they heard, and that was very helpful, I believe, for everyone who was in the room to get a better understanding of what occurred on that Thursday. There were a couple of pieces that we talked about at the end as far as some areas that certainly we can look to refine in the process. One of the areas, as is indicated here, is communication. And so we did learn some pieces such as the limited communication that occurs in the cafeteria. And so when there are students in there, it is difficult to hear some of what is conveyed over the intercom system for that. And as well in terms of the assumptions that are made at times with communication. And so when the announcement was made to have an evacuation, we learned that some equated that with an active shooter piece. And so although that was not what was communicated, again, some took that they were evacuating and made the assumption that that's what it was for. And then at that point, there was some communication that occurred via cell phones between students as far as things that were happening that was not accurate, that was not occurring, such as there was a shooter on campus and things of that nature. And that added on to some of the confusion that was happening on the campus. Another aspect that we learned about after the debrief was this notion of a multifaceted procedure. And what that refers to is the notion that there were two procedures that were done on Thursday. The first one was the lockdown, and that was at the order of MCSO when they got word of the suspicious package. And so the lockdown was ordered immediately by MCSO, and then later there was the order for the evacuation. And so that became, it seems somewhat confusing for folks in terms of why there would be those two pieces adjacent to each other. And then also with that communication in terms of some folks not being able to hear over the intercom, that order, that again added to some of the confusion there. And then the last bullet point is really more global as far as the district role. And I would say the takeaway from that was hearing from folks the strong focus over the past 2 years in terms of COVID safety. So COVID, and knowing the different procedures that should be taken with respect to COVID. So whether it be contact tracing or any of the numerous pieces that we do with respect to COVID, is making sure that folks are reminded and are practicing the other safety procedures and having some heightened awareness to those. Although they are, as I mentioned in the prior slide, they are absolutely doing them and logging those procedures, but making sure perhaps that there's a heightened awareness for all when they are practicing those, meaning the students and all of the staff members. Scott, anything you'd want to add in terms of the debrief, or do you think I covered it there? Okay. Okay, and with that, it brings us to questions. And so, President O'Brien, we will be happy to entertain questions at this time.
Board members, questions? Mrs. Paperman?
So from my understanding, we do have a lockdown procedure. So my question, and fire drills, but my question is with the evacuation, because it seems that it was not clear. So what is your process with the evacuation?
President O'Brien, Ms. Paperman, again, I believe what it seemed like from the debrief is that the confusion is that the students and the staff in the cafeteria could not hear what was being communicated over the intercom, that there was no longer a lockdown, that it was an evacuation to a particular part of the campus. And so other than that, the process would be to follow what's on the ERP, and they go to their designated section for an evacuation.
Okay, and it seems that parent communication, because I believe in the evacuation process, there's also a parent communication for example, where students are going to be picked up on-site or off-site.
President O'Brien, Ms. Paperman, that would depend on the actual situation in terms of what is occurring.
Okay, so we're going to have a training with staff, so that way we're better prepared for next time. Like if something does happen, a bomb threat or a shooter, that we're going to know what steps to take.
President O'Brien, Ms. Paperman, yes, again, they have had training, and we will work with our campuses to make sure that there's heightened attention to those.
Okay, I also, since I got emails, I also would like to bring up that parents have concern of what happened during that time. And since there was so much confusion, like you said, loudness, too much going on, the students were, I guess, I don't know if they were put on discipline or some action for leaving the campus or something like that. So my question is, it seems that there was a lot of confusion even with the adults, and I think taking the step and punishing kids for something that did not go well at that time, I think that we need to reconsider that.
President O'Brien, Ms. Paperman, I did talk with Principal Sutton, and as of this afternoon, there was no disciplinary action that was taken on students. Now, that said, that doesn't mean that there couldn't be for that, as again, there are some reports of students that were actively trying to cause disruption by stating and rumors and then relaying those rumors that were patently false to others.
Okay, can the boards have the process of the evacuation? Like I would like to know a designated backup on campus, transportation plan in place, parent pickup on-site and off-site. So if the board can get that information so we can see what the process is, and also training. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Paperman. Mrs. Fisher?
I was, it's been a rough couple weeks, but I can't help but wonder, we've watched school district after school district. We were lucky there was no bomb. We were lucky there is no shooter. We're lucky we have not lost a school of kids I mean, we've lost some due to some tragedies, but we haven't lost a great amount like has happened nationally. But district after district, we make the same mistakes, we do the same thing. Because these are the protocols, protocols that are advised to follow for every district. Is it possible that maybe we look at this a little bit differently? Maybe we have a study session to actually look at what could we do that's a little more meaningful rather than just traumatizing kids, parents, community out of panic or out of concern. Because I doubt any school district employee would just panic people. There's no one heartless. They want to protect the kids. But that's in that process, parents and kids get scared. I don't know if Miss O'Brien remembers, I think she went to the same training or seminar thing I did years ago. They talked about completely different protocols, completely different ways of looking at security. Protocols where you don't just, an alarm goes off and all kids run into the hall, so they're a perfect prime target. Protocols where we actually look at our buildings one by one. We have a communication system that maybe doesn't herd all of our kids out into an area or panic them. There were so many methodologies that they went over, but it seems like no school district has jumped on it. And when you ask or when you bring it up, it's almost always, well, we don't have the money. We have the money for all kinds of things. Find the money. Our kids are primary. So I just think maybe we should have a study session to actually review maybe what are the best protocols and maybe what needs to be changed.
Thank you, Mrs. Fisher. Mrs. Reed?
I've got a couple, I've got a lot of questions. So we talked about, sorry, I'm going to go back, the ERP. What is given to parents to outline what the procedures are, safety procedures for their students in case of a situation similar to what happened at BCHS?
President O'Brien and Ms. Reed, in terms of the actual ERP, let me answer this first part, and then you can tell me where you want to go from there. The actual ERP is not shared, right, for that. So there are pieces to that which are for security reasons, right, that we do not share those with folks outside of that school. So that's that part. So are you asking for something different on there?
I'm asking, so we have the ERP. What I'm asking is, there is some information that could be shared to parents regarding an emergency plan of what might happen. I'm asking what the district shares with parents when a situation like this happens. So I know that there's always a letter that goes out after explaining, that there was a lockdown or there was a threat that was investigated at school, but preemptively, what is shared?
Excuse me. President O'Brien, members of the board, Dr. Finch, Ms. Reed. Typically what principals will do is share a synopsis of what the ERP means in terms of monthly fire drills, or evacuation drills, quarterly lockout or lockdown drills that we're going to talk about. We don't share relocation locations for obvious reasons. But we would share that should an event occur where we had to relocate students. An active shooter situation isn't typically a relocation event. It's going to be an event where we have to find people all over a particular community. And so that's a different kind of event. So it's really difficult to say, okay, if you run off campus, run to Starbucks, run to Walmart, where one of those sorts of scenarios. But typically what the principals will do in their messages is to talk about the emergency procedures and how important they are to and what they can do. In our ERP, we have different roles, and like for teachers and for classified, and for they're delineated for folks inside the ERP. So we share that with our particular folks to whom that applies. And and Dr. Zurbach reminds me, the SRNR has information as well for our students as to what's going on. So,
and I don't know, I don't know specifically what could be shared or if we need to clarify better for parents, but it seemed like the majority of the emails that the board received, parents are looking for resources to better prepare themselves and better prepare their students. And so I don't know if there are resources that we can send out to parents when something happens, or when they send out communication that there's going to be a fire drill or a lockdown drill, this month, that we could send out links to articles that are vetted as far as a way to better prepare students and better prepare parents, crucial conversations that parents may need to have with their students prior to it. I think that would be really helpful. I know my son, and again, he grew up in a military and public safety family. My husband doesn't go anywhere and sit with his back to the door because that's just not how he was trained. But he thought about things a little bit differently, and when he started high school, he knew what all of the exits were in every one of his classes. He picked his seat very wisely. He knew who the strong kids were in the class and who the kids that needed to be protected were. He had a safety plan in every single class he had. And one of the things that he came home and said was, "Mom, I see a risk during Eagle Hour because there's no safety plan." He goes, "We have these drills, but what the likelihood that something's going to happen when we're all not in class is pretty high." And so I had sent an email to the principal and requested that they look into and put a safety plan together for Eagle Hour and what that looked like. But I know that all of our high schools have something similar to like that O'Connor had at Eagle Hour. But I think when these situations happen, it's not a perfect textbook case, right? There's chaos that happens, and you don't always know how you're going to act or behave under pressure. I mean, we're human, and we have different responses. But I think it's really important that as parents that we prepare our kids and have those conversations, even though they might be uncomfortable. But I think responsibly as a district, it's important to make sure that our parents have access to the resources that they need in order to be prepared for their kids. Specifically for the ERP, what are the qualifications for the command team? How are they chosen?
Well, they're chosen by the site administrator, and then they're FEMA trained.
Okay. What partnership or coordination do we have with our local police departments? So I know that we've got Glendale, Phoenix, Peoria, and MCSO that covers our district. So how often are those law enforcement agencies interacting with the schools that they cover and then with the district?
In what context? Because we have officers every day.
Correct, I know, but specifically, like, there was a meeting that I sat in 2018, and and I know that was a few years ago, but we were specifically talking about law enforcement and schools, and they had mentioned that Phoenix PD had a really great partnership with Paradise Valley, and that they had quarterly meetings for a safety a safety committee, and they would share information with the district. There's information that comes out, all the time about different active shooter situations and threats, and there's always after action reports, and things change. Things change all the time based upon, what happens. And so I'm curious as to what, if we have something like that, or if that's something that, if we don't, something that we could establish.
Yeah, we don't currently have a standing meeting with the other agencies that cover our campuses, but it's certainly something that we could set up.
I would highly recommend that. I think with the information that I know and how frequently it changes, I think that that's important information to make sure that our district and our principals have, and that there's a good resource for them to share information or share concerns. Can you just briefly walk through what the process is? What happens when a threat's called in? Who's calling the shots? Is it you? Is it the principal? Is it the law enforcement agency? I think there was some confusion from some of the parents that didn't understand who was in charge. So I think that would be helpful if you could explain that.
Sure, you want me to keep going? All right. President O'Brien, Ms. Reed, and each incident can be different. It depends on who takes over incident command. In this particular incident, the SRO felt that a lockdown was appropriate once he received the information from his dispatch center, and that there was a suspicious package on campus. There was a specific description of it and a semi-specific location for it. He became concerned that it would be important, I think, to know where everybody was on campus by locking them down. So in this particular instance, the sheriff's office asked for a lockdown, and Ms. Sutton agreed, and so that's how they locked it down. She remained the incident commander because the sheriff's office was just primarily concerned with searching for the suspicious package. So they did their business while the school was doing their business in terms of the incident command system. Had it been an active law enforcement situation where, for instance, an active shooter that was on campus or something of that nature, the law enforcement would take over incident command of that particular incident. And when that incident was over and neutralized, likely the fire department would take over incident command in terms of rescue and first aid. So it really depends on the situation and what's going on. And it can be fluid as well in terms of that case. In terms of the structure, this particular time, the SRO asked for a lockdown. Ms. Sutton went into lockdown and remained the incident commander for the rest of the incident.
Thank you. I know that there were several summers, I think 2016, 17, 18, maybe summer of 2019. There were different law enforcement agencies that used some of our area high schools over the summer to practice, active shooter drills. Do you know if any of those are planned in the future?
I'm unaware of any, but we never say no when they ask.
Thank you. And then one final question. I think in this situation, and as we're moving forward and we're looking at areas of opportunity for growth and to tighten up some of our policies and procedures around this area, I think it's really important that staff members share with their team or with their principal what areas they feel like they need training on, areas that they feel like they, if they need a refresher and stop the bleed, or they need, I think it's important to get staff input, and I really want to make sure that our classified staff really feels like they know what to do, and they are trained, and they have all the resources and the tools available. Watching some of the videos, they looked like they were very helpless. They couldn't get the kids to listen. And that was heartbreaking to see. And it was all heartbreaking to watch. And I know that there really isn't anybody to place blame on other than the person who called in the threat and started it all. And I know that if that happened at one of my kids' schools, I would have been an upset parent. And I think that anybody, you know, if any of our kids were in that situation and one of the kids in the video, it would have been really hard to watch and to get those phone calls. So I know that the district is going to do what's necessary in order to make sure our staff and our students and our parents are prepared. In case anything like this ever happens again. So I'm hoping that once you get the training updated and you have some different things to roll out, that you can come back and give us an update on what some of the staff feedback was and the areas that you'll be training on next with them. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Reed. Mrs. Ordway?
I'm pretty sure we're going to come to the conclusion that we need to at least have some kind of a, I don't know, a training, a workshop, something where we can explain to our parents and guardians, community members, not the specifics on what our plans are, but the whys, the wherefores, and the responsibilities that everyone has during a situation like that. Many of the phone calls and emails that I got, again, they were upsetting, and it just made you wonder. But part of what concerned me was the students were texting back and forth, getting information that wasn't actual information for whatever reason. They all have phones, and when my best friend tells me I heard this, then I'm going to believe that. The kids were helping each other. They were trying to do what they thought was right. Parents were trying to do what they thought for their kids. But, you know, you had kids on I-17, which was not a great place for them to be. And if it was an active shooter, we could have had lots of things that went wrong. So I think training, or at least explanation and understanding of why you do and don't do things when you're a student in the situation, a staff member, not just a teacher, but all staff members, and when you're the person waiting to find out about your kid, these are the things that you have to do, and sometimes you have to fight your emotions on it. And perhaps training would be a little bit more engaging if it wasn't just, or in addition to, a video. If I'm actually having to walk the walk and run the run and see if I can hear that. The adults got as freaked out as the students got, which sometimes is what makes the students freak out, because our adults freak out. I know that you have been updating. You had a talk with us at some point in time about the change between hiding and not doing anything. So it's, you know, so I know that we're updating as the disgusting situations come up, and we can learn from how other schools have had students and staff survive these things. Do know that we do stop the bleed in the high schools. Do we also do that in the K through 8s or the pre-K through 8s?
We've provided it to some of our staff in the K-8s. So I know the PE staff has been trained. It's difficult to get everybody together because it's quite the undertaking. But yeah, so we have pushed it down to some of our staff in the K-8s.
Some of the emails were from staff from K through 8s, not specifically or only teachers, but all of staff, cafeteria staff especially, very interested in what they're, you know, supposed to do, and that includes the maintenance during that time. So we did have that meeting here with Phoenix Police. I mean, we had everybody here. Do you remember? Okay, so have we, maybe we could plan on that again if there's time for it, so we can see faces again and get coordinated. And do you guys reach out to other states to find out what the best practices are that they've been using. Just a query.
When we update the ERP every year, we look around to see what other people's ERPs look like.
All right, yeah, I think it's really important that the adults that have students inside of our campuses, when something like this is going on, they need to understand that their students know what to do, so we need to make sure they do, and so does all the faculty, because that way it might work out a little bit better.
And I could add on, Ms. Ordway, too, a little bit. So in terms of the updated protocols, as far as how you described them, we do have folks, for instance, Julie Frank, as you know, attending, and Scott does at times as well, as far as some of the conferences that they have. For instance, there was one recently, we know, at Grand Canyon, which we talked about 2 months ago. And so when they have those, so again, like if the question is, are you going out of state? Well, many times it's the experts from around the country are coming and they're putting on those types of conferences. And so those are also in some of our end-of-year conferences that we have. And so, yes, we are up to date as far as with the recommended protocols, procedures, et cetera, for that.
I just don't want, and I know that we can't allow all of the information out because then that compromises the safety, but I don't want anyone to believe that we're stuck in a 2000 and whatever 10 and we haven't updated, or even a 2020 and we haven't updated. And again, I know it's a fine line not to compromise safety, but to let there be reassurances. And I would suggest that we try to figure out, I know we have no time for anything else, the pie gets smaller and smaller, but K through 8, they're asking for stop the bleed. They want to know how to, because, I mean, even if they are in K-8s and we have something going on at one of the high schools, if a campus is close by, then they could, assist. And thank you very much for all of your work on this.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, for the presentation. And my kids have been out of the school system for a few years, and so I hadn't looked to see what we had available to our parents in quite some time. And I know that we had much more information when my children were younger, albeit that was a different time when we maybe didn't have to worry so much about, I mean, we did release, this is where your pickup zone is if our campus is evacuated. And I certainly understand the changes, but I couldn't concur more with my fellow board members that we need to make sure we highlight safety to our students, staff, parents, and this might be a great opportunity, as you were talking, Dr. Zurbach, about a virtual opportunity to have information broadcast and then saved on our website so anybody could see it any time. I think this also presents us with an incredible opportunity to do different kinds of trainings, right? We've all done the lockdown or just the evacuation or just, and generally speaking in times that are very controlled. I hope we will take this opportunity to do the mix of evacuation and a lockdown in our future trainings with folks so that they can understand how it should work and why it should work, and we're able to communicate with our kids. I know in talking to Dr. Finch, he's was thinking very hard about how do we have a better communication system for our students in those areas where it is loud and noisy, like a cafeteria at lunchtime. I mean, those are difficult times to try to communicate to however many children or high schoolers we have in our campuses. And I do know from reading the emails that this was very traumatic for some staff and students and parents. And I do want to commend Principal Sutton on reading those emails, taking those phone calls. I've received since some emails thanking her and praising her for providing resources and sitting down and trying to truly understand what some of her students and parents and staff went through. So thank you for standing up and knowing that we can do better. Deer Valley prides itself on being a great, extraordinary district, but we always know when there's a time to step back and evaluate what we're doing and move forward in a better way. And I look forward to working with you all in doing that. And we will probably have to have an executive session for school board members to know more about the plans that has the information that we wouldn't release to the general public for the safety of our students, staff, and our community. So we can do that in the future. But I look forward to hearing back later on about what changes we can talk about in public and what we to make this better going forward. So thank you again for listening to us all and for presenting a little bit of a debrief. I know we're not very far out, and it is important for parents and students to understand that, as Dr. Finch said, you can't cry or scream fire in a crowded, movie theater. That is wrong. There are consequences for that, and there should be consequences for students who made that situation worse than it would have been had folks been taking care of their neighbors rather than creating more chaos. So with that, Mrs. Reed has one more.
Sorry, it just came to me. I know that we utilize text messaging quite frequently to get information out very quickly to parents. Is it a possibility to get parent permission to have their students opt in to an emergency text system to when there's something like that that's going on at school? The principal can send out a text message as well that, there's a lockdown or we're going into a lockdown drill or something like that. In the case that it is too loud and they can't hear. That I think if we would have had something in place similar to that, it would have dispelled a lot of the miscommunication that was going on in the lunchroom. I don't know if that is a possibility, but I know that my teenagers never went any place without their cell phone. So, even upper elementary school students have it with them during lunch. So just a thought. Thank you.
Yeah, President O'Brien, Ms. Reed, there are some complications with that. That said, that is one of the takeaways that we had as well, as far looking at ways that perhaps we can better direct communicate with the student in a situation like that. So we are exploring potential with anonymous alerts as well to see if there's ways to broadcast something direct to a device that they would have. So we are aware that college campuses may have this capability where in an event of an emergency, they can direct communicate with folks via that way. So we will be exploring that type of communication.
Again, thank you all. And so we will now move to the second report for this evening, which is the Futures Report update, and Dr. Zurbach is in the hot seat again.
Okay. Thank you, President O'Brien, members of the board, Dr. Finch. So we will pivot to our second report, which Futures Report for us. This will be a somewhat lengthy report for us today, as it will cover a very important topic, and that is special education as well as intervention for all students in our district. This particular report will cover two board meetings. So tonight will be part one, and you can see in part one that we will get into some of the background about the Futures Report, what exactly it was, how it started. We will also cover in detail the areas of opportunity that the Futures Report provided to the district. And then we will communicate to the board what work has been accomplished by the 4 work teams, which you will learn more about in a few slides. And then part 2, which will be at our next board meeting, we will go into more detail about the work that still needs to be done. As you know, we did have COVID that was a major disruptor in terms of the original timelines that we had, because that second bullet point there that references the timeline, we had one that actually would be finishing about now had the pandemic not occurred. And so that did cause us to delay. That said, I do want to acknowledge that there was quite a bit of work that was still performed, even despite the challenges that COVID presented to us. And so we will get into more detail again in our next session about that timeline for the work that needs to be done still. Okay, and with that, though, I'm going to pass the baton just for a minute over to Dr. Finch, who will let us know what the Futures Report is and how it started. Dr. Finch?
I'll be short because the board knows a lot about this already. But 5 years ago when I was hired, that was one of the charges by the school board that hired me. I think it was because of my experience, my 12 years of experience at an ISD in Michigan, which is handles a special education program for multiple districts and over 2 counties. So I had that history, and so that was a part of probably why I was hired. When they asked me to, during that process, to look at our model that we have a full inclusion model. We believe we may be the only school district in the state of Arizona that runs this, if none of our NEVIC neighbors run it, or districts of our size. So it has great opportunities for kids, and it also has challenges. So we were asked to investigate that. We called upon some experts from the East Coast, and the board approved that study. They came with experts and interviewed staff, students, parents. The board was interviewed, administration, et cetera, et cetera. They spent a long time with us, wrote a great report called The Futures. And that in that report it had, and that report is again on our website, that report was, I think it was around 100 pages, and it brought out a timeline and some options for our district. We formed all our committees and started executing that plan, getting the timelines together, et cetera, et cetera. And then, as Dr. Z mentioned, COVID hit and we put the brakes on it. So we did get down the trail about a quarter of the way, but we've since fired up those committees again and have started on the process of conversion to their recommendations. So that's where we're at today.
Thank you, Dr. Finch. So this slide visually captures what Dr. Finch just talked to us about. So again, you can see, just to make sure we're clear on dates, this actually goes back all the way to 2018 when we did have our initial kickoff. And so with that, then the folks from Futures, they did come, they did their interviews, there were lots of panels. They looked at all of our schools, 38 at that time. And then there were follow-up pieces, the surveys that were done, much analysis that was handled by the Futures group as well. And then you know that the authors were here and they did do a presentation. It was a lengthy presentation to the board covering what they found. And then immediately afterwards, again, as Dr. Finch already explained, there was the steering committee that was formed and then our work teams that came about. We had 4 work teams that were started at that time. There was a behavioral service delivery team, and that work team is the one that probably has the most focus on it due to some of the behavioral challenges that were articulated by the staff members throughout our district. We also had an academic team, we had an SEL team, and then we had a human capital team. And so we will talk more detail about those teams as we move forward. But with that, I will now ask Dr. McCusker to talk about some of the initial areas of opportunity that were highlighted by the Futures.
Thank you, Dr. Zurbach. Good evening, governing board members, President O'Brien, Dr. Finch, and community. So I'm going to focus on the driving questions in the Futures analysis, and there were many. These driving questions really prepared the Futures team that was doing the work in our school district to really guide them and to dig deeply into areas for opportunity and areas that needed refinement, as well as areas for celebration. So I'm not going to read every question to you, but I do want to highlight some of these areas. Primarily, foremost, they were looking at culture and climate, really how not only staff members, but also the community, parents, everyone thought about special education and the services that were being delivered in Deer Valley Unified School District. Of course, during the course of this analysis, there were multiple stakeholders, as Dr. Zerbach alluded to. They had multiple interviews, and there's a future slide that will show you actually how many interviews were taken in this analysis. They also looked at our overall personnel, our programming, and our physical capacity within the school district. And so they also looked at a continuum of services and transitional supports for students. For example, how did our developmental preschool students transition to kindergarten and our middle schoolers transition to high school and so forth. And they also wanted an opportunity to look at our students who are located in private placements. Although they may not be housed on their homeschool campus, they're still district students. So we wanted to be sure that we had input from not only parents, but also the providers for those students. And then we also wanted to look at meaningful vocational opportunities, post-school outcomes, how we provide transitional opportunities for our students after they graduate from Deer Valley Unified School District. They also focused on horizontal and vertical articulation. And what does that really mean? How are all of the agencies and how are all of the departments and schools within the school district talking to each other? And how are grade levels speaking to each other? So it was really about that continuum of processes and communication. Continuing with driving questions, a focal point was also early intervening supports, and this crossed over many domains, including cut out for a moment, multiple work groups. So many of the work groups actually focused on the intervention piece, including MTSS. They also looked at how we delivered related services. Related services, as a reminder, includes our amazing speech-language pathologists, psychologists, occupational therapists, teachers of the visually impaired, nursing services, and so forth. They also wanted to look at our parent engagement and how we engage with our parent community. They wanted to know about opportunities for parent trainings, as well as communications going out from the district, as well as student support services. And then finally, they focused on finances and were we maximizing revenues within the school district to provide supports, programmatic services to students, and also within our school transportation department.
Thank you, Dr. McCusker. Our next two slides really, again, just continue on with information about the research that was done to come up with some of the answers to those driving questions and also to produce some of the overall themes of opportunity for the district. And so you can see the number of interviews that were completed, and it's a big number. Okay, and with that, Dr. McCusker, why don't you cover the broad areas?
So there were findings and opportunities, and these broad areas included organizational considerations within the district, a continuum of supports as they apply to special education, and then finally, financial review. And again, as a reminder, this 4-hour board meeting, I remember it well, occurred on May 21st, 2019, and it is linked here for your review. As we look at the work teams that were established, we met to determine these 4 areas and really the phase 1 work approach that we had to this. So the first work group I chaired with Dr. Zerbach. It is the Behavior Service Delivery Work Group. The second work group was facilitated and led by Mrs. Moffitt, and that's the Human Capital Work Team. Mr. Scott Warner led the Social Emotional Work Team, and then finally, Drs. Galligan, Dr. Tunis, and Dr. Smith led the Academic Work Team.
Okay, and again, this slide again captures the fact that we did have an initial timeline that was a charge to us from Dr. Finch, and that timeline was completed, and there was work that was performed up until the start of COVID. Okay, and then this slide here captures work that has been done during COVID times, but now also as we are coming out of many of the restrictions and then into the future. So again, you can see that we did resume our work in the 4 work teams, as you see there in the fall of 2021. We then have most recently been engaging with our work teams with quite a few meetings in terms of seeing where we have come, where we are now, and where do we want to go again. And although it's been said many times, given that many of our COVID pieces are moving away. Those plans are taking action now, revising those plans for a new 3 to 5 year timeline, and then we will begin taking action in the summer of '22 on some of those new steps, and then continuing on into the fall. Okay, and with that, I'll give it back to Dr. McCusker for the Behavior Service Delivery Work Team.
We have a great rally going back and forth here, Dr. Zurbach. We're playing tennis. So there was a lot of collaboration in this work team, and I just wanted to celebrate. There are some people that were a part of this work team that are in this room, and there are also those that are online. So I want to thank everyone for their support in our Behavior Service Delivery Work Team. So as I stated earlier, Dr. Zurbach and myself were facilitating and chairing this work group. It was comprised of more than 20 members from a various amount of stakeholder groups throughout our district. And we did have a total of 5 meetings where the stakeholders were present for each of those meetings. So as we dig into the Behavior and Service Delivery Work Team, there are areas that we're going to focus on this evening, and they are represented here. First, we're going to talk about service delivery, and this is directly from the futures analysis about a continuum of services. We're going to really dig deeply into behavior. There were a lot of data sets as well as a lot of information from our stakeholder groups regarding behavior. Of course, speaking about communications, our amazing and #extraordinary BAT team, our human capital perspective, Vista Peak expansion, onboarding and professional development, and then finally early intervention. So this slide focuses on service delivery, and this is something that we are expanding within Deer Valley Unified School District and Student Support Services. So this incorporates all of the continuum of supports that are currently being delivered to students in Deer Valley Unified School District. What I would like to focus on this evening is the green section. There is a reason it is green. It is growing. We are trying to grow capacity in these 3 areas. First, I'd like to focus on the Specialized Learning Center. For those of you that are familiar with special education in Deer Valley, we call our classrooms where students on IEPs are serviced learning centers. The reason we call them learning centers is there's flexibility within a learning center. Students can flow in and flow out to receive service delivery, and then some students may remain within the learning center for the majority of their instructional day. It depends on what their IEP dictates. So our learning centers have gone very well for years, and Mr. Michael Remus brought those forward to really change that forward-thinking process. Many of our students have great educational benefit in our learning centers. However, based upon feedback as well as the futures analysis, there are some students in our district that may not fully benefit from a learning center and may require more specialized instruction. And so what we have evolved into on some of our campuses in Deer Valley Unified School District are what we are now referring to as specialized learning centers. What is a specialized learning center? It really focuses on delivering services to students through the majority of their instructional day, and it provides more specific instruction in the area of communication, for example, structured learning environments, more structured behavioral systems. It incorporates our amazing related services staff, where they're coming in and providing more intensive frameworks for our teachers and more intensive frameworks for our students. What we have learned from our specialized learning centers is that our students have benefited from more structure. It, at times, is smaller than a typical learning center, and it provides more focused work and more focused perspective for the students. And so our specialized learning centers started us thinking, how could we again expand opportunities for our students within Deer Valley? So we met with our other work teams and really our other stakeholder groups that you will learn more about this evening. And a proposal came forward for a positive intervention classroom. As we reviewed data in the district, a lot of our behavioral data, which is one of our number one concerns in student support services, many of the phone calls that we get from our esteemed principals sitting before you surround around behavior. And so when we looked at our data, our K-3 students were really presenting with behaviors that perhaps if we provided more intensive interventions for, they could be more successful in a kindergarten classroom. An example would be a student who's never been in preschool, who's never been in any type of structured environment. And then one day, they're in a kindergarten classroom for a full instructional day. And that could be challenging for a student who's never had exposure, who's never had structure. So the positive intervention classroom was vetted through many stakeholder groups. And what we are proposing is to initiate the positive intervention classroom not only for students on IEPs, but for students in general education. And this is truly intervention. It is not necessarily a change in placement for a student on an IEP, but it is an opportunity for them to participate in a very positive intervention classroom. It would also be based in our Boys Town model, and that is something that we've been implementing for the past 2 years, and we have great success with our Boys Town campus. And we would incorporate our specialized classroom management into this positive intervention classroom. Later this evening, Mrs. Nicole Basil is going to be providing some more perspective regarding the positive classroom. I apologize, my microphone keeps cutting out. And her perspective as a site principal. So the specialized regionalized program is the next aspect, thank you, is the next aspect in this green section. And so when we look, Dr. Tunis is so very helpful, thank you. As we look at our specialized learning centers, what we are hopeful is that these specialized learning centers will ultimately sprout into what we're calling specialized regionalized programs. What does this mean? This could mean that students within Deer Valley who require more intensive supports and perhaps their needs are not being met on their homeschool campus, when we look through the lens of least restrictive environment, which is something I must do every day, we need to be responsible to service all students. And so this is an opportunity to provide access to students in Deer Valley versus sending them to a private placement. We want to be able to keep our students in the school district as close to their homeschool as possible. So this is an extended opportunity in our continuum to provide services prior to going to a more restrictive environment, which would be a private placement. So these 3 green areas are expansive in our continuum. The other domains in this continuum are the same. Again, we start with general ed, and it can go all the way to home instruction or a hospitalized program. But for this evening's purpose, we wanted to focus specifically on the green areas because we're growing them. And I also included a direct quote from the futures analysis. As we were going through this process with stakeholders and interviews, a comment that was demonstrated in the analysis on page 7 said the district's continuum of services elicited the greatest amount of discussion and passion. So they really dug deeply into this data, and we hope that it will be represented this evening. The second domain is behavior. As I stated before, many of the phone calls that we receive in student support services have to do with behavior. And we see ourselves as behavior specialists. And being able to collaborate not only with our school sites, but with our other stakeholder groups is something that we take very seriously. So on average, we reviewed all of our documentation. On average, we receive in student support services leadership at least 20 calls per week regarding behavior. So this is a high area of concern and a high need for our campuses and for our students. And so a direct quote from the futures analysis is, it was repeatedly stated that student behavioral issues such as attentional problems, hyperactivity, anger, verbal and physical aggression or outbursts, as well as other psychosocial issues, are significant challenges in many schools. And we know this as building and district level leadership. And it is something, again, we want to be able to provide progressive and optimistic supports to. And this is a direct quote from me, the number one need expressed by our campuses is a request for behavioral support and behavioral guidance. And so we need to be able to be responsive, not only in a quick manner, but of course in a correct manner. So there are some examples cited here about student support services responses. First and foremost, we established a behavior support team, and that was a new iteration this school year. It was actually a recommendation from our principal advisory work team, which you'll learn a little bit more about later. We have always held CPI, which is Nonviolent Crisis Intervention, under the Student Support Services Department, and this is an opportunity that is ongoing for our classified as well as our certified staff. Boys Town, as I spoke of earlier, our Goldwater region has incorporated Boys Town well-managed skills as well as specialized classroom management, and those are at campuses throughout our Goldwater region. BAT, our BAT team, this is an acronym that stands for Behavior Autism Assistance Team. This is a small but mighty team. The small but mighty team at this time is comprised of 4 team members. We have 2 board-certified behavior analysts, 2 behavior consultants. We have 1 autism tech and a vacancy. So I wanted to provide you with some data about, although the small but mighty BAT team is small, they certainly are mighty. This school year alone, they have received 52 BAT referrals. BAT referral is when a campus or a school team fills out a referral to request comprehensive support to a student, to the staff, or a campus. This year alone, they've provided support to 35 campuses. This is district-wide, so either a team of BAT members or 1 BAT member has come and has provided direct support and consultation. 104 students have been supported this year, inclusive of 10 preschool students, 79 K-8 students, and 15 high school students. And they have solicited and performed 32 trainings and professional development offerings this school year. I have also included the amazing Bat Cave. We certainly don't need to look at this now, but it is there for your review later. This is a resource for all of our staff in Deer Valley Unified School District, which encompasses everything behavior. So you may review that later. As we look at behavioral response and support, one of the proposals that we would like to present today is looking at behavioral support by region. And so when we look at a regionalized perspective, it becomes more manageable. As I stated before, the small but mighty BAT team is supporting all of our campuses district-wide. Deer Valley is a very large urban school district, and so it is unbelievable that they've been able to provide all the support with our small team. However, what we would like to propose is regionalizing BAT support. For example, if you are in the Sandra Day O'Connor region, you could have 1 BCBA, you could have a psychologist who would assist for mental health supports, a mental health counselor, a behavior consultant, and a behavior tech. What that could enable behavioral response to do is be more timely, certainly become more familiar, not only with the staff, but also with the students. One of the great things that has occurred this year is Open Care. I have updated you in board updates with that. And the Open Care through Medicaid now allows different personnel within the school district to bill directly for Medicaid services. And we are now able to bill for behavior services. And so our BCBAs will be able to directly bill, as well as our licensed psychologists, our mental health counselors. And so this is a wonderful advantage for behavior service delivery.
Thank you, Dr. McCusker. And I will just add before going on to the next slide again that everything that you are seeing, I want to draw the attention again that it comes from the Futures Report. And so in terms of these sample resources, again, the dominant theme throughout the report was the need to support behavior on campuses. And so suggestions like these were outlined in that report. And so that's why we are looking now to take action on many of those suggestions that were handled in there by the experts. Okay, continuing on with behavior. So Dr. McCusker has talked more in detail about some tier 3 type of situations when staff and campuses are needing specific help for a particular student. This next slide then talks or addresses more of the need to strengthen tier 1 and tier 2 systems across the board at all campuses. And so for that particular need, we do have a work team that is comprised of various members of the BAT team is there, Student Support Services. We have members from Dr. Chunis and Dr. Galligan's teams because of their work with MTSS-A that help us with MTSS-B. And then we have a number of principals. Jen Miner facilitates that particular team. They have attended a recent conference that gave many suggestions as well that were related to many of the items contained in the Futures Report. So that group has been meeting since November and has been presenting out to our elementary principals. We will be looking to scale that up to our secondary principals sometime next school year. But again, just as this slide says, it's looking at a framework for looking at any gaps in terms of addressing behaviors that are in our system. Okay, Dr. McCusker.
Now I'm going to focus on stakeholder communication, and I'm briefly going to discuss the first 2 prompts, and then I'm going to ask Mr. Galletti, our principal from Sierra Verde, to provide more perspective from his lens. So the first area is our Student Support Services Principal Advisory Work Team, and this is a work team that I'm so very proud of. This came directly from Futures, recommending more communication intra-district. Student support services needed to have a communication system directly with our site principals. So we initiated the Student Support Services Principal Advisory Work Team, and this has been occurring for the past few years. And we have done some really amazing work, and it's been so wonderful to work directly with principals. And the second prompt is working with our BLT, or a building leadership team, and also with DVEA. Having the opportunity to work with both of those stakeholder groups has been amazing. I'm now going to hand it over to Mr. Galletti, and he's going to speak more at length about these 2 domains.
Thank you, Dr. McCusker, and good evening, President O'Brien and members of the board. And thank you for allowing us the opportunity to kind of present from the on the front lines principal lens of campuses that the 3 of us up front here are here to kind of inform and enlighten where we're at through our Futures stakeholder communication. And it was interesting just sitting through and going through these slides and looking at those Futures quotes that were from 2018, which are definitely true, but that was all pre-COVID, and going through some of those quotes and seeing some of those interviews and discussions pre-COVID, it's almost seems quaint now, because in the last 2 years we have seen such an escalation and such a ramping up of behaviors since COVID, and because students were away from school and away from peers and isolated for so long, that the fallout from that will definitely outlast the actual pandemic itself, is picking up those pieces. And that's kind of what we're seeing as school principals and our special ed coordinators and our itinerant support staff that do amazing work with our kids each and every day, is that we've really seen a deepening of the anxiety, the behaviors of the being at home for so long, and some students moving here from out of state that were out of school for over a year, and now we're seeing a lot of effects of that on our campus. So in looking at the principal advisory work team that was formed out of the Futures recommendation, that's been the first, the behavior and the role and the implementation of paraprofessionals have kind of been the 2 big prongs we've tackled in our first 2 years, because they are the most pressing. And so we're definitely, again, seeing an increase in behaviors, and primarily, as you saw in the continuum in the prior slide, we're seeing that in our primary, our K3 or our pre-K 3 students. And again, a lot of those students have been delayed. They missed out on a lot of education. They missed out on a lot of the socialization they are in crisis because their families are often in crisis. And so we're seeing a lot more acting out. We're seeing a lot more demand for our staff, and we're tackling new problems, and now we're trying to come up with new solutions to tackle those new problems that have been escalated by COVID. So I know all of our building principals are excited about some of the direction that the Futures Work teams have been going, because we know right now when we look at, because I'll put on the BLT hat as well, because I serve on both the advisory committee and the building leadership team right now. Definitely, we are seeing our staff running ragged. They're having to do the work of many. Like Dr. McCusker said, our BAT team is phenomenal, but there's a very small group to cover 40 campuses. And so we're definitely seeing a need to specialize in the way we serve kids, be more flexible with how we deploy staff and how we deploy our resources, and making sure that we can protect the good staff that we have from burnout, allowing them to specialize and drill down into more specialized areas, and more training for behavior support, and to again try to address the vacancies, because it's no secret that there's a teacher shortage right now, and that is no more apparent than it is in our special education teaching staff. We have many vacancies because it is a very demanding job that I'm not sure I could do myself. I give um, my utmost respect to all of our special education teachers and coordinators and staff, because we have asked a whole lot of them, and they take the brunt of all of the structures we put into place. They implement and they do an amazing job. But right now, we're definitely seeing that they're running ragged and they need more support. So we want to look at ways where we can service our students and get them what they need, and more flexible, and to meet the new challenges with new solutions. So that's kind of where we've been at, and in brainstorming with all of our principals. This is definitely across the board at all of our campuses, all of our demographics, and all of our age groups. We're seeing this, and so we're looking at ways that we can evolve to meet the needs of our kids and our families, and service kids and get them the support they need within Deer Valley.
Thank you so much. All right. Stakeholder meetings continued. So Mr. Galletti talked about our principal advisory work team meetings. We, even in the midst of COVID, were meeting and collaborating and producing work. As well, BLT meetings, having conversations with our building leadership team. And then, of course, our Futures work team and Futures meetings. We had 5 meetings, as I already addressed, and our Futures steering team, which really led the work for our Futures work group. The next prong is Vista Peak expansion. As you know, at a governing board meeting, you did approve an IGA with an external school district, and one of the opportunities for improvement was Vista Peak expansion. Vista Peak School, as you know, is a public day school in Deer Valley Unified School District. And we are able to service our students that receive a private level of service. And this is a wonderful campus that many school districts envy. It's a wonderful opportunity for us to keep our students in our district. We did include in our expansion just this year, we opened up the RAISE classroom, and the RAISE classroom focuses on students who would be referred to as students who meet the profile of medically fragile. These are students that are quite involved not only with sensory needs, but also with vision and or hearing impairments. And we have plans for continued expansion opportunities for our RAISE classroom at Vista Peak, as we want to be able to bring students back from other private placements and keep them in Deer Valley Unified School District. I am a true proponent and believer that the best staff in the state, possibly the nation, is in Deer Valley Unified School District. So why wouldn't we bring our students back to provide them with that access to that great level of education? This is very exciting news. Our Grow Your Own program was approved by the State Board of Education, and this is Deer Valley's answer to those staffing vacancies that Mr. Galletti referred to. We do have quite a few vacancies in special education, as well as other school districts across the state and the nation. So we wanted to be innovative and think of a different way to approach this. And so we created a scope and sequence and submitted it to our State Board of Education, and it was just approved in April 2022. This has not been a solitary event that Student Support Services has done. We have collaborated with our Human Resources Department, and they have been instrumental in their support for this process. We have grand plans to begin coursework, and so this would include field work for our extended school year beginning this summer. We want to initiate courses beginning this fall, so we would like to be able to do so as expeditiously as possible. We want people to be in our vacancies, and we want to be able to provide instruction and coursework that is relevant to their needs. So further opportunities for this expansion, I will ask Mrs. Moffett to just expand upon that a little bit, as this is not going to solely remain in special education. We have plans for further development. And I have your microphone.
We are in the process of completing a second application and should be ready to send that over to ADE soon for their review so that we can do the same for the general education population. You'll notice the final bullet there. We are recommending that we add a coordinator of teacher preparation so that this person could have the oversight of this entire teacher prep program for both special education and general education teachers, as well as collaboration with our mentor department to support them as they move into their first few years of teaching.
All right, so onboarding and professional development. This is just a snapshot of the many opportunities in student support services that were recommended in the futures analysis, and we've expanded upon them. So we continue to meet with our itinerant staff, which is a very large group of hundreds of professionals. I give a shout out to my itinerant peeps out there. Our behavior support team, our BST, again, was an iteration directly from our principal advisory work team, and this is something we responded to and created this year. And they've had 9 professional development opportunities for our campuses and school. Communities of practice is something that we started 2 years ago. A COP is an opportunity for like-minded people to hop into a meeting and learn more about something. And so each of the domains in student support services has facilitated a COP. For example, Dr. McLaughlin, that's right behind me, has had psychologist COPs. We've also had BAT COPs, motor COPs, speech and language COPs, early childhood COPs. So these are great opportunities. They're not mandatory and they're voluntary. It's a great way to do a check-in with our staff, check on their social emotional welfare, and also provide them with meaningful PD. Our BAT meetings, we've been very busy in BAT. We've had 18 meetings in 2021 and 22, as well as 2020 and 21, and 18 specific kid conversations where we drill down and really talk about the needs of specific students. Again, another iteration from our principal advisory work team was really focusing on our paraprofessionals. And so we developed lead paraprofessional training in student support services, where we trained lead paras that have been recommended by their site principal, and then they take that training directly back to paraprofessionals on their school site. And so it's been a very beneficial and collaborative process. And then finally, our special education strategist meetings, we meet with them on a monthly basis to ensure that they're apprised of legal updates and also about procedures and processes.
I would just add before we go to the next slide that this level of support that Dr. McCusker and her team has provided is truly been a somewhat monumental feat given the challenges that the system has experienced over the past 2 years. And so there truly are a number of opportunities that the department has provided, again, drawn from some of the recommendations from the Futures Report that the team has already put into place and continued despite the challenges of COVID. So that is certainly something for student support services to be commended upon.
Thank you, Dr. Zurbach. Early intervention and transitions was another recommendation to focus on. And so as we already discussed briefly when we looked at continuum of supports, the positive intervention classroom is something that I would like to expand upon. And so I did invite Mrs. Basil to provide her input and perspective as the principal at Legend Springs, to provide her perspective as a principal. Mrs. Basil?
Yes, thank you. President O'Brien and members of the board, Dr. Finch. So this is a conversation, as Mr. Galletti alluded to, that is not specific to just pre-K 6 or K 8, but it is, or a certain demographic, but it's happening across all campuses. And like he stated, it's interesting to read the futures report, and I think it's like 200 pages or more, because the language when it talks about behavior, it truly is just the tip of the iceberg with what our kids are coming with now, and the need is coming at such a young age. And so we know that when we come as educators to the table, we are here because we deeply care about kids. People say, oh, you're a principal because you make the big bucks. And I say, medium bucks, actually, because we are here because we love kids so much. And our hearts are breaking for these kids in general and special education right now. And we have an amazing MTSS structure in place. And those tiers of support that they talked about with RTI, it's really important to know that we know that not every child who goes through MTSS is going to go to special education. It's not the point. It's not the purpose. And we know that some students need that intervention and specific intervention with behavior, targeted intervention, so that they can then go back into general education. And we feel like there's been a gap in that place right now. And so to have that opportunity to focus on those students, both general education and special education, where they can receive that intensive intervention and have that Boys Town specialized classroom management that she was alluding to. There's more specifics here with the classroom criteria, looking at up to 12 students who receive that intensive behavioral support and the academic instruction. There will be entrance and exit criteria. It's developed based on positive intervention plans, but again, that question that's alluded to from the Futures team are early intervening supports, so MTSS across domains of literacy, numeracy, and behavior, meeting the needs of the students. We talk a lot about the least restrictive environment, and sometimes a student in general education or special education, that least restrictive environment isn't in that learning center at that moment, or it isn't in the general education center at that moment. And so having this intervention or transition place, that positive intervention classroom, or that green space that Dr. McCusker was talking about, where we can really maximize interventions in a semester or a transition to look at how we can support those students, is what our principals and our teachers, and really our teachers who are saying, I want to specialize in behavior, I believe in this, and I care about our kids, and I have an expertise, but I'm also being expected to specialize with students who have autism, or students who have maybe Down syndrome, or students who are just maybe potentially speech or specific learning disability, and that's okay. But when they have a passion, we want to use their passion where it's best fit. Just like we as a principal, I know that my kindergarten teachers are amazing at their job. And even though I taught kindergarten before, I know that they're better at it now. And I want them to do that job well because that's their specialty. And they don't want to teach sixth grade. My sixth grade teachers want to teach sixth grade. And so when we talk about these specializing and strengthening our teachers who have a passion to do that work in those specialized programs, that is where that heart comes from our gen ed teachers and our special ed teachers and our student support services staff and the building leadership team as we continue to gather feedback and input and how we can support both our general education and special education students who are coming with more and more needs and sometimes less and less skill to get them to that point. And so it's out of a passion and a commitment as a team and with Futures to support this many years ago.
Thank you, Nicole. I would also, President O'Brien, ask Jackie Dutori to come on as well and share a bit from the lens of the Title I group of principals. Jackie was with us at the start of this particular group. And so this is going back now again, as we shown almost 4 years ago, when Jackie, Dr. Price Berry, and a number of psychologists from Dr. McCusker's division joined us, along with some teachers, when we talked about the need to respond in a systematic way to some of the behavior issues that were being presented to us. So Jackie, perhaps you could articulate a little bit more about some of that need that was voiced, again, going back several years ago, and then some of what your title group has expressed recently in the post-COVID times.
Yes, thank you. President O'Brien, members of the board, Dr. Finch, everyone else. Oh, I'm not in there. Okay, I thought I was. Sorry. I like to take a mic and go Vegas style. But anyway, I have a vested interest in this from the beginning, so I'm just going to share this with you so you know who I am. I've been in Deer Valley for 35 years, started out as a special education teacher. If you want to know the history, ask me. I've been through it all. So that's why me being a part of any of these teams was very important to me, because I want to, not necessarily repeat the bad parts of history and improve the good parts, all of that. But specifically the team when we started, the first behavior work team from the Futures Report, we were all over the place because we wanted to fix everything immediately, which we know we can't. And what came out very strong was that need to start with the early interventions. And so when you see this focus of, why does that just say K3? Aren't there issues in 4, 5, 6, et cetera? Yes, but we want to hit the early intervention. We know that that works really well with the academic side for kids, and we've been doing a great job in schools doing that. We need to hit it with behavior as well. From the Title I, I've been in Title I schools, I don't know how many years, I forget counting that, but for a lot of years. And what I see there and what I hear from the non-title schools, and I want to quote someone else that said, we really shouldn't be called title schools. We're schools that receive Title I funding. We just happen to have more folks that have a little more financial need. But the children are children, and what we see are children who are coming with less experiences. Their way to express themselves is more difficult because they don't have some of the experiences to express what they need. And now we're seeing that with students who have been isolated or at home. And what we all know is that any behavior is a function of some form of communication. They're trying to tell us something. And so that early intervention, we really, really felt strongly that we needed to put our focus there and get that rolling. And then as we continue on in the plan, which you'll hear about other times, we will, continue to move up those. But we should see great improvement because we're going to do early intervention. Not sure if I answered whatever I was asked to speak about, but I'll be here all week.
Thank you, Jackie. Okay, and then our last slide on this particular work team summarizes, captures much of what you've already heard. So you are seeing much of what was done before COVID. You can see some of the work that has continued throughout COVID, and now you see a glimpse as well as far as some of the items that have had work that has been put to it, but will happen in the future. Again, I want to reiterate that all of this that you see here is derived from that Futures Report. It comes from the analysis that was done by the experts in that report that provided us with these areas of opportunity to help improve our district, both with respect to behavior and academics. And with that, as you have heard Dr. McCusker somewhat, it does mean that there needs to be some additional resources that are provided in order to implement some of these items that you have heard. Okay, and so with that, we're going to jump to our next work team, and that is the Social Emotional Learning Work Team, which is chaired by Mr. Scott Warner. Scott?
Thank you, Dr. Zerbach. So our team started great guns blazing, a very dedicated group of folks meeting. And we have a very varied group of folks that we put together. It became apparent to us that what was going on in our district was lots of different sort of programs that were either SEL or they weren't, but they were being called SEL. So as we prepared to begin our evaluation of all the programs in our district, of all of our schools, COVID hit, and we did not go to school campuses to evaluate our programs. And so the rest of our meetings were a little more intermittent after that. So then we had meeting 6 in the first time around, 2 in 2020 and 21, and just one meeting since then. The one meeting since 2021, 22 is really just because we have sort of paused what we're up to, waiting for the behaviors team to really move forward with what they're doing. So as you see, we have a strong connection to the behavior work team. I'm a de facto member of that team now, it feels like. But we did put together the CASEL rubric. I think we provided to you at one point that we like it as an opportunity to measure what our SEL programs and what their effectiveness. And then we've also talked around the idea of SEL programs in particular regions, so that our different high school regions might have the same SEL programs, so that everyone in that region speaks the same language. And we have a variety of programs, but not the wide variety of programs that we currently have in our district. And so that's really sort of where we were, and now we're sort of in a holding pattern as we move with the behavior team.
Thank you, Mr. Warner. Okay, that takes us to our third work team. This work team will articulate in more details, such as we did with the behavior service delivery work team, in particular to the topic of intervention with MTSS-A. And so with that, I'm going to pass the baton to Dr. Galligan.
President O'Brien, members of the board, Dr. Finch. I know that this has been a long report, and we will be as succinct as we can be in this last area. I'm going to talk with you just a little bit about our academic focus work team. We had 3 areas: multi-tier systems of support, transitions and bridging, and Dr. McCusker kind of alluded to that earlier, and then co-teaching. When we look at the actual work team demographics, it was chaired by Dr. Chunis, Dr. Smith, and myself, and we were very fortunate to have over 20 classroom teachers, campus administrators, and department leaders all participate in this, and each of them had unique connections with those 3 areas. You can see that our team meetings began in October of 2019, and we went strong and actually had, as the previous teams have mentioned, finalized recommendations going into January of 2020, and then the pandemic hit. But since then, I can say very proudly that this team reconvened at the end of the 2021 school year to review what we had talked about and the recommendations that had been made based on the Futures report, and made plans for this current year. So in the fall of 2021, we did meet 3 times. We looked at those 3 areas: MTSS, transitions and bridging, and co-teaching. And again, where were we? What were we wanting to do? And where did we need to go? And so that's where we ended in October with our final recommendations. We did have 7 big ideas, and you can see those here around MTSS. And this evening, we are only going to talk about multi-tier systems of support and the recommendation from the Futures team. You can see that we had a significant need for consistent verbiage or consistent language. We had interchangeably used RTI, or response to intervention, and MTSS, multi-tier systems of support, and then just the generic intervention. The Futures team noticed that and said that is an area that we need to just make consistent. And that meant consistent across both our MTSS-A and, as I'll talk in a little bit about, our MTS-B behavior. You'll see that there is a graphic to the right, and that graphic is what has been driving our MTSS work for academics specifically, and will be now moving into behavior as well. That graphic is published widely across our campuses and is part of the work that this particular team pushed us toward. Go ahead. So I'm briefly going to go over each of those 7 recommendations. This first one, again, is to ensure that all of our schools utilize the term MTSS. You can see what the actions were, how we have evidenced that work, the responsible groups, and then our completion dates. And I'm happy to say that we are much more consistent in using MTSS as our term for intervention across all of our schools and our system. Gary? The recommendation was also to look at our not only language, but our forms, our team compositions, and everything that we do, specifically right now for MTSS-A. Again, you can see where our actions are, and this work continued not only from before COVID, but through COVID and through this year. You can see where we've evidenced that work, the responsible groups, and then our completion dates. We've also listed there that we are still in progress, and I don't foresee this ever being ending. It's just a continued growth so that our system, as new teachers come on, new administrators come on, are part of that work. Next one. This recommendation is in process. So when we look at collecting data regarding the percentage of students referred for testing into special education, and those that are just participating in our Tier 2 and our Tier 3 interventions. So you can see that we are continuing to work on this one. It is an in-progress recommendation still. This next one really looks at how do we ensure that our teachers, not only our support staff, but our teachers find value in the tiers of intervention. So Tier 1, first best instruction, Tier 2 intervention, which really does happen in the classroom, and then Tier 3 intervention, which is outside of the gen ed classroom. And you can see these are our actions. We have had multiple book studies with different groups, and each group has had targeted work with it, professional development, specific teams of teachers who come together and then share that work with our campus. And then, as you've heard previous this year, we did adjust our instructional minutes at K-8 so that all 3 tiers of intervention were built into the master schedule. You can see that this one is still ongoing there in those next steps. I'd like Mr. Galletti to just share from a campus perspective the need for our psychologists and their role in MTSS.
Thank you, Dr. Galligan and President O'Brien, members of the board. In looking at the MTSS process, and I think anyone that's been around Deer Valley for a while knows that our MTSS process has been very solidly laid when we're looking at our academic interventions. And we want to make sure, as Dr. Galligan said, that when we look at MTSS for behavior as well, we are working and implementing the same structures and that inverted pyramid design. And part of that is making sure we have the right experts, around the table to look at data and to look at strategies to put into place. And certainly, our school psychologists have a very specialized and unique lens when looking at interventions that can be put into place, goals that can be set, and strategies that can be tried for all students. And all of these are, again, correlated to a lot of the behaviors that we have been seeing, and all of our departments are aligned with this. I know with Dr. Tunis and Dr. McCusker, and all the departments are coordinating this effort, and having the school psychologists as a part of that MTSS team really helps to make sure we're getting kids what they need, keeping them in the least restrictive environment, and making sure that the MTSS process, as Mrs. Basil referenced earlier, it's not a stepping stone to special education. It's getting interventions into place as early as we can, giving a good 6 to 8 weeks of data gathering to target very specific goals, and hopefully intervening and making students successful before we need to go further down that continuum and down that pyramid, unless absolutely necessary, so that we are giving every student what they need and that we are not putting them in a more restrictive environment than they deserve. And our psychologists play a key role in helping us set goals and monitor that behavior.
Thank you, Tony. This next recommendation is to extend MTSSB, or behavior interventions in the district. And I can say that this has been a significant focus this year in our fact finding and our baseline building our own knowledge. So that means our knowledge across our departments, and then a focus group of campus administrators who have also been working on building their knowledge of MTSSB and how that may change a paradigm of thought about addressing behaviors. If you think about it, in MTSSA, we have Tier 1, which is for all, Tier 2, which is for some, and Tier 3, which is for few. If we put that in the lens of MTSSB, that means how do we deal with behavior across our campus? How do we deal with behavior in our classroom? And how do we deal with behavior in unique situations? And we're very fortunate that we have an amazing guide to help us in departments and the campus focus group, and now in our campus administrator level meetings. We are bringing that idea, thought, and information so we can wrestle with it and ensure that as we move forward with MTSSB, that we do have consistent language, that we do have consistent processes across not only our campuses, but across our departments, so that messaging is similar and consistent. And I think the key word in this whole part of MTSS is that we are consistent in our messaging, consistent in our processes, and consistent in intervening for children both academically and behaviorally. So our next steps, again, you'll see that word consistent, is that we do continue with our momentum in MTSS-A academics, and that academic generally focuses on reading or English language arts and math, and then our MTSS-B, our behavior efforts in Deer Valley. Futures gave us a call to action for multi-tier systems of support, and I'm proud of the work that Dr. Chunis and her team, our campuses, and our other departments that support MTSS have been able to do prior to the pandemic and through the pandemic to where we are now. I think the Futures gave us a kind of a jolt before the pandemic hit that allowed us to really think through the 3 years that we've had with pandemic learning loss and loss of learning opportunity for kids. And that MTSS has really helped us along. With that said, though, we have some proposed ways of enhancing and building upon what we were able to do with the Futures Report. We want to maintain our MTSS-A specialist with a dedicated focus on multi-tier systems of structures and tier deployment across our district landscape. And what I mean by that is I can say Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, and it sounds really simple. It is not. It is time intensive. It is planning that's involved. It's timely intervention with children, and this is across K-12. So it may sound like it's easy, but it is very complex with the academic side. And then imagine adding the behavior side. So we are requesting a 1.0 FTE for MTSS-A for a K-12 math intervention specialist. We are reorganizing in the CIA department a current literacy coach position to become a MTSS-A grades 3-12 reading intervention specialist. And we are reorganizing a Title IV behavior position to become the MTSS-B specialist position. When we think about MTSS, not only is it a Futures Report recommendation, but it is the first thing on our strategic plan in Priority Area 1. So thank you for helping us.
And so with that, President O'Brien, I summarize by saying that there certainly has been quite a bit of effort that has been put in so far from members from all over the district with respect to the analysis that was done in the Futures Report. There's been a great deal of progress that has been made, and there is still a great deal of work that remains to be done. Again, you can see here tonight an outline of what has been done. You have also seen a brief outline of some of the new resources, whether it be with MTSS-A and MTSS-B, which Dr. Gallagher has covered, or whether it be with the teacher prep resources and supervision, which Dr. McCusker and Mrs. Moffitt talked about. But we do believe that these additional resources that have been discussed and that are outlined as needed in the Futures Report will be well received by our district staff, and it will have a benefit for our students. And so with that, we can certainly entertain questions.
Thank you, Dr. Zerbach and everybody who presented, and our special appearances by our principals. Appreciate that. Questions? Mrs. Fisher, we'll start with you, and then will you handle Mrs. Ordway while I step out?
My first experience with Deer Valley Special Education was in 2002. And at that time, I can say Deer Valley had the absolute best control over pre-K 3, with finding kids, identifying them, getting them into the developmental preschools, partnering with parents. Moving on, the district, little by little over the years. First, let me say we have awesome people in our district when it comes to special education. I know this because they were my partners in raising my son. Somewhere around 2012, there was an extreme decline in our special education in Deer Valley. And around 2014 is where the push for an evaluation of special education first became a mission. And started in 2015 and pushed, and we finally, by 2017, were able to start even thinking of evaluating it. This finally getting that point was the greatest highlight and has somewhat been the greatest disappointment for me. And I'll tell you why. Because I know the hearts are in the right place, and I see such desire to make improvements and such awesome ideas. And I do see the work that's done. But at the same time, since I've been on the board this time, more than half of the teachers who have requested to meet with me privately have been special education teachers. And this is the first opportunity we've talked about it. So I would have brought it before now if I had the opportunity, but this is the first time. In those meetings, what they have brought to me is that they are concerned. They feel less supported than ever. They feel that the BAT team is punitive. They are fearful of utilizing it. They were excited. They thought, this is it. I need this support. It's going to be there. They're going to come. And they were very disappointed to find out it was punitive for them rather than supportive or helpful or suggestive ideas of how to make things better. I've heard of how Vista Peak has become a money-driven facility rather than a child-driven facility. And to get a student into a level D off campus because it's really needed is virtually impossible. I've heard, and this has been for many years, that the learning centers are referred to as warehouses. If we can't get them into a level D, we'll stick them in a warehouse so that we can manage to teach the other kids. These are all statements that have come directly from special education teachers. In addition to those, I've heard about the severe lack of para support. I have heard of paras who have resigned, not because of the pay, because they love their job, they love these kids, but because, in the words of one of them, I'm one person, and there was no support for me, and I could not support all those teachers that needed me, and I could not support those kids, and I had to walk away. That breaks my heart. I'm glad we're talking about this, but I do, and the presentations, I know how much work goes into putting these presentations together, and I know how much work goes into all of this, but I really think, this is just my opinion, and maybe I'm completely wrong, but I need to take a real look at what we're doing that's right and help it blossom, what we're doing that's wrong, find a way to cap it, stop it, change it. But I think everybody has mentioned that how bad the pandemic kind of knocked us a little, and I'm sure it did, and nobody had any control over that. But I almost think that there should be more of a study session where we do a reset of what is everything still applicable for where it is? Do we need to adjust a direction? Have any of the suggestions been rerouted to be something other than what they were originally intended for? And I don't know that answer. I would love to have a town hall with special education teachers. I would love to know how they feel, what they, even if we did it in a virtual, you can't see me so I can say the truth, because I will tell you, some of them have told me that they're, I guess the most heartbreaking one was one that told me that she's biding her time to retirement as soon as she can get there. For all these years, she's loved these children, but she can't do it anymore because she has no support. And that broke my heart because I know that individual to be a warrior for special needs kids. And so I don't know the answer. I do appreciate the information. I'm very glad we're looking at as the rate of special needs kids has when my oldest was a kid, just autism alone was 1 in 10,000. When my son was diagnosed, it was 1 in 263. A few years later, it was 1 in 65. This isn't something that we can miss because it's so many kids. This is our next generation. And our teachers can't do it alone, and they need true supports. And honestly, the one thing is that I have seen is not all teachers are made for special education. And the ones that aren't, that's cool. We need to support them where they are meant. And the ones that are meant, we need to make sure that they have everything they need, because you can't teach someone to work with a special needs kid. It comes in the heart. And if it's not in the heart, it just doesn't work. So I appreciate your work, but I do think we need to, have a reset, an evaluation, a study session, something to make sure we're on track.
President O'Brien, Ms. Fisher, your last comment about needing heart, I absolutely, I do agree with you that the heart is an important component in all that we're doing right now. I think it is important to remember, though, for this part, that we are responding to what the stakeholders had voiced through the futures report. So the stakeholders that you referenced, such as the paras, such as some of the special education teachers, those were, and I don't know specifically the ones that talked to you did it, but I know that the authors of the report, that they talked with hundreds of folks from around our district that have some type of interest in the area of special education. And so it's from what they voiced, again, a very large contingent of folks there. That information went into the report, and that's what we use to drive what we are doing here. Again, so it came from the stakeholders voiced it to the authors, the experts, and the experts to the analysis. They put together their suggestions. We are making action plans, if you will, based off what the experts were communicating to us in that report.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I totally agree with you. But I can tell you I'm not the same person I was in 2018. I don't know that any of us are. And that's why all I'm saying, I'm not saying that we undo what we've done or even that we just chuck what we're doing, because there's a lot of great material there. I'm just saying I think maybe we should just have at least a little bit of a conversation to reassess and see if there's, let's face it, is anybody the same as you were in 2018? In some areas, I'm a lot stronger, a lot smarter. In some areas, I'm a lot meaner. In some areas, I'm a lot sweeter. Put my grandson in a room and, man, I'm like Mary Poppins. We're all very different from what we were in 2018. And all I'm saying is that I think we just need to honor those that are doing the work as well. While we're building the ship, they're keeping us afloat. I'm just saying I think that we need to make sure that hitting the mark. That's all.
Thank you for sharing that.
Mrs. Paperman?
Special education is a challenge in districts that I have worked in 18 years, and it comes down to funding. I was emergency certified special ed because I work in 2 different districts and they couldn't find a special ed teacher, and I learned so much. How much support special ed teachers, the caseloads of students, or given extra jobs that's not part of special ed, the numbers of special ed teachers within the classroom. So it is a challenge. And once again, that comes down to funding. It would be fantastic if every campus had more than 2 special ed teachers, because that will help them with their caseload. The intervention that from the presentation, to me, it sounds fantastic. As a classroom teacher, if there's an intervention classroom where they're going to be working with behavioral, that's going to support a lot of the classroom teachers. I don't know about special education, what is under load with it, but I know for the classroom teachers, that will be extra support. And we know that there has been changes from before COVID and after COVID, and we do see a difference. And our kids do need those intervention. So listening to the presentation, as a classroom teacher, I was very excited. I'm like, okay, this is a great district that, they're looking other options, to make changes, to support what we're going through right now. And I do appreciate that we're looking at behavior, because, you hear it in the news. Kids are coming back with behaviors that in the classroom that we have not dealt. So we want to teach our standards. We want to show our growth. We want our kids to pass state assessments, but we need major support with behavior. So this will be great, and I appreciate for doing this. In special education, once again, my question would be, how many sped teachers do you have in every campus? You know, do they have enough sped teachers? Maybe because I do hear from sped teachers too how burned out they are, how they're not happy within the district. And from my experience being emergency certified, that's what I have learned, that we need more sped teachers on campus to help them with a case. When you have a large caseload, there's no way that you can do so much. And I remember being up until midnight trying to catch up with a caseload of students that I had on within my school. So if we can look and support special ed teachers, and just if we can have those fundings to add more sped teachers in the school, and this will also support students to meet those IEP goals. Thank you.
Thank
Mrs.
you for
Reed?
sharing that.
As we are building out the positive intervention classrooms and the specialized regional programs, can you provide us with some more in-depth information about those, as far as identification criteria, where they're going to be housed, transition information, how they're going to be transitioned to that program, the criteria for them to be transitioned out of the program, you know, all of that, the intricacies of that. I'm excited that we're moving towards these programs. I taught in Paradise Valley, and I was a self-contained teacher for kids with severe behavioral problems, and I loved what I did. That was what I specialized in, and I chose to do that because I didn't want to be in a resource center. That's where my heart was, and I'm glad that we are giving teachers the opportunity to focus on an area that they love and giving them the tools and the resources to do that. Being a mom in the district and listening to some of the stories that my kids come home and say about some of the behavior disruptions in their classroom that stop the education process, I'm thankful that we are going to address those behavior issues for all students, not just special education students. And then the other question I have is roughly, I don't remember if I've asked this question before or not, but roughly how many students do we service in special education?
President O'Brien, Ms. Reed, to your first question regarding the positive intervention classroom, we have built a lot of structures, and so I could certainly share all that information in a board update. It is intricate, and we want to be able to service students who truly need that level of intervention. So thank you for your comments.
And we can go into that too, Ms. Reed, in part two, because remember, this is part one.
Yep.
This evening. And then in May, I think it's May 10th, we can go into some more detail about some of those future pieces that will go into place.
And in reference to question number 2, we service approximately 4,300 students on IEPs, as well in student support services. We also service approximately 2,200 students on Section 504 plans. So we have an expansive population of amazing students that we support.
Thank you.
Mrs. Ordway?
I do appreciate all the work that's gone in, and thank the three of you very much. I know that for the last, excuse me, maybe decade, principals have been looking for regional support. So going back to something that Mrs. Fisher said about the report, all of you that had to do with continuing and maybe reforming, relooking at your work groups, the suggestions that were made by the Futures report, did we look to see if, because it was from a while ago, if that was still applicable, or how did we deal with the age of the report when we decided to work on the solutions? Everybody's shaking their head. Gary, go ahead.
President O'Brien, Ms. Ordway, I can address that. So certainly, it's important to remember that the work teams still have a number of folks that represent different areas of the district. So whether it be administration, support staff, teachers on the ground, paras, et cetera. And so we still reference the futures report when we have our work team meetings. And so what I would say is from behavior service delivery, certainly what was articulated at that time is articulated and perhaps even more now, given some of what our three principals have talked about with COVID. And I would imagine that for Dr. Galligan, Dr. Chunas, that they would say the same. And again, with Mr. Warner, their team has needed to, in essence, shadow the behavior team because what we do provides direction to their particular team. So again, I just would say that it's very much echoed from the folks that are still part of those work teams.
From what you guys have talked about tonight, it seems that many of the things that were pointed out by, or in the futures report, are larger than they were at the time that that we got the final report. So what I'm also hearing is that we're looking to have consistent resources throughout each campus, and that is the additional help, whether it be staff or actual resources, or, yeah. Go ahead.
I would say the staff or programs, right, Ms. Ordway, there as well. And so, and that staff, as you have heard, could come in a variety of ways, whether it is, again, supporting with the teacher preparation program, which really goes to Ms. Paperman's point about supporting our special education staff and helping to close some of what we know is the gap with the shortage we're experiencing right now, to our MTSS positions for our schools, and then for some of our behavior support, specifically addressing the slide that has the sample of what a regionalized support would look like for our schools.
And then I think this is going back a little bit ago, maybe half hour, 45 minutes. You said that we now have lead paraprofessionals that bring training back to whom? The campus, the specific campus?
President, sorry, go ahead.
Dr. McCusker, you can certainly jump in, but perhaps one of the principals could talk about that for us in terms of how they do it, since it's actually occurring on the campus. And our former principal of the year, Jackie DeTore, with her hand raised. So Jackie?
She did say she'd be here all week.
You didn't mean throughout the night, through the week,
I've
though.
been hitting the unmute button a while now. Okay. Yes, so that came out of the principal advisory team that a lot of us were on, and we felt it was the paraprofessionals have been begging for professional development, and so we formulated a plan and implemented it this year. So we all identified, all of our schools identified a lead person to get those trainings, as Dr. McCusker was explaining, and then they come back to the campus, and then they're doing this on the PLC early release timeframes. Is that the part? Okay. The thing dropped, right? That I hit the word. Okay.
That was my next question.
So they're because we were finding that their time, everyone else is busy doing their other things. And so that's why we identified a lead to get the right training to then bring back to the campus during those timeframes to then train those paraprofessionals. And each campus, I know as on my campus, I also insert myself from time to time because I have something to say to everybody. So, and I did want to say one other thing, if I can, about what we're paying attention to when we're on the futures work teams is all of the principals, like we are loud voices, and we always bring up the current state of affairs. So it might not be hard data, but it is here's what our people are saying, here's what is happening. So we are looking at that when we're continuing the work. So I thought I would just mention that.
Thank you,
Jackie.
One more question. Where do we talk about building counselors for each campus. Is that part of this, or I should just email you and I'll find out later?
President O'Brien, Ms. Odoye, are you referring to what has been lightly discussed at previous board meetings?
I'm talking about each campus needing a counselor and how we would do that. I don't know where that fits.
That has not been a part of our immediate conversations. Teachers, I do know, again, that has been voiced in the past. I think we've had a couple on that as well. And so I think I would say that is something that we would want to aspire to, certainly in terms of having that level of support. That is not immediately on this particular presentation that we have here. There are grant pieces, as you know, that are related to that are outside, involved with our school safety program.
Okay, I was just wondering where it fit. That's all. Thank you very much for everything.
Thank you all. I just would like some clarification related to the report. As we went through the report, you guys talked about regionalization of teams, and I believe I counted 5 staff members under those regional teams, and then an additional person for human resources related to the teacher development program. And so I was kind of taking notes, but then, and that math, rough as it may be at this late hour, was about 26 people. But when you got to the end of your report, the number of people you requested looked like 1 with the reorganization of 2. And that math doesn't work for me even at 9:30.
So President O'Brien, that last slide was just with respect to MTSSA and MTSSB.
So very specific to that area.
Yeah,
Okay,
that was that particular team.
That is very helpful. Makes me feel a little bit better. And then I'm going to reserve the rest of my questions and thoughts until I hear the rest of the presentation. Although I probably don't have this authority, I'm going to release the 3 principles up front because.
Do you need a second for that? I second that.
I guess we could vote, and then we do have that authority, don't we? Because you guys start early in the morning and have lots of kids to take care of. So thank you for being here and presenting in this information. We will look forward to part 2 on May 10th and move to our public participation.
We have 2.
Call to the public.
The board invites public comment on the district's business in general and on any agenda item in specific. All speakers must observe the rules of decorum. Speakers must fill out a card listing name, address, and topic and hand it to the board secretary prior to the president calling the meeting to order. Speakers must make their comments in no more than 3 minutes if necessary to accommodate all 30 minutes. Overall limit, the board president may shorten each speaker's time. Tonight we have 2. Constructive criticism is in order. Rudeness, who's doing that with the lights? Constructive criticism is in order. Rudeness, vulgarity, disruptive conduct, or remarks disrespecting personal dignity are not in order and will not be allowed. Under the Arizona Open Meeting Law, the governing board cannot discuss or act on any items that are not listed on the agenda. Board members may respond to criticism made by a speaker, ask staff to review a matter, or ask that the matter be put on a future agenda. And we have Kathy Arnold and, oh my goodness, Renita Garland. Did I say that right? Thank you.
If you guys would step to the mic. And if you'll state your name for the record, then your time will begin. And you will have to step fairly close to it. Thank you.
I'm Kathy Arnold. I'm a parent of 2 Boulder Creek students. I'm here to talk about the pandemonium that happened last Thursday. The most horrifying text of the day was from my son, was 2 words: I'm scared. I hope none of you ever have to experience what we did. There were 3 types of students that day. There were cafeteria kids that experienced acute, sharp trauma by adults telling them to run. They were terrified, thinking they were running for their lives. Second, there were classroom kids that were locked in place and received no information. They were stewing in a slow trauma, waiting for a gunman. Third, there were the football field kids, those sent from the evacuations. They felt like sitting ducks, fearing that a gunman would follow them into the open air without any protection. My youngest son was in a classroom. Nothing was communicated to the teacher. 45 minutes into this nightmare, my son took it upon himself to call 911. The operator informed him law enforcement was on site. He told his classmates and teacher. They all felt a little better finding this out, but this had not been communicated to the teacher. I realized some details needed to remain close to the vest, but how could telling teachers that law enforcement on property would be a bad thing? And the football field kids had it worse. No one checked on them. No one communicated with them for 90 minutes. How does that happen? We should be able to have an accounting of what the administration was doing for 2 hours. For 2 hours, you made our students Parkland students. You made them Sandy Hook students. You made them Columbine students. We as parents know now how those parents felt, but thank God we were able to hug our children in the aftermath and tell them that we loved them. I have wondered why the school only has 2 lunches. This is a dangerous situation. With a population of over 2,500 students, during each lunch, there are over 1,000 students outside of classrooms. The unprepared and unfortunate cafeteria staff were forced to deal with this terrible situation. There should be more lunches to reduce the number of exposed students, gates to come around from the cafeteria wall of glass, and drills should occur during simulated lunches. One last thing. After the all clear, the kids were told to go on with their day and go to 7th hour after they had just experienced hell. That was one of the most heartless things that could have happened. Such disregard for our students, our faculty, and our staff, and the trauma they had just gone through. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Please state your name for the record, and then your time will begin.
Hi, my name is Renita Garland. Thank you so much for hearing us out, board. Just hearing you guys explain and express what happened on April 21st sounds nothing like what we've experienced. It's, you know, we got this in place, we have this in place, but when we were there, that was not in place. So I'm happy that you guys allow us to come in here and put a different perspective in place. Because when I was there, the announcer, her voice sounded like something was wrong. Do not let anyone out of the buildings. Now imagine hearing that a little bit louder, a little bit more intense. That doesn't sound like it's in order, and that does not sound like, oh, we have a plan in place. They were traumatized. And then the officers in the buildings coming and sweeping through. In my son's class, I was on the phone with him the whole time. All I can hear with him on the phone, oh my God, someone is at the door. They burst through and I hear commotion. The only thing I can do as a mother is wait to hear gunshots because that's what we're being told. But I also knew just coming in on the building that it was a bomb threat, but they did not know that. To say that, oh, some students were just texting and saying, oh, there's a shooter, what else do you expect them to know or to say when nothing was related to them, when nothing was given to them, and the staff was terrified and they didn't know what to give those kids? So I don't blame the children and I don't blame the staff. I blame the process that you guys have. So I appreciate the board raising those questions of what's in place, what can we do different? Because when I think about it, even being compacted inside of an airplane, they even have beeps to let the staff know, hey, this is this tone, these 3 beeps, it means turbulence is coming. Let's calm the cabins down. We should have something in place like that on ground with our kids as well. We don't need to know your plans. The staff does, because when they have everything in control, those children can be in control. I applaud them because they stood up for each other, they helped each other, they threw each other over the fence, but they didn't have to do that. So I do ask that as you guys think about it and hear this in our voice and how it really happened, that you consider doing something where the staff can be able to control the scenario, can control the narrative. Because if they knew what was happening and what to do, instead of telling them to run for your life, they could have said, hey, stay in your seat. I know you heard something, but this is what's going to happen. And if you guys calm down, listen to my voice, we'll get through this. But everyone panicked. So I appreciate you guys listening, and I hope that you do consider something in place that this will never happen again.
Thank you for your comments, and we will be following up on this. Okay. We'll be moving to old business.
Absolutely. I would ask that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to approve the annual K-12 use of facility field fee schedule for 2022-2023.
I second.
I have a motion and a second. Mrs. Mock, are there any changes?
There are no changes from the recommendation at the prior board meeting.
Board members, are there any questions or discussion?
No.
Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, please say nay. Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. I know that, there it is. Okay. Please register your vote electronically for Mrs. Taylor. Wonderful. Consent agenda.
You ready?
Yes.
I would ask that the governing board approve consent agenda items 6A through 6L.
I second.
We have a motion and a second to approve consent agenda items 6A through 6L. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. I think there's a little bit of a delay on the technical part of it. Thank you, Mrs. Taylor and board members.
Are we ready?
Yes, ma'am.
I would ask that the governing board approve employee professional development.
I second.
I have a motion and a second to approve employee professional development. Is there, any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, please say nay. Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously.
Ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. I would ask that the governing board approve a job order contract, for a classroom addition to Sonoran Foothills School.
I'm going to move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to approve a construction job order contract number 1 GPA 18-15 PV with Chase Building Team for classroom additions at Sonoran Foothills School. Do I have a second?
Second. Thank you.
Mr. Miglerino.
President O'Brien, members of the board, Dr. Finch, I've taken several dozen slides and consolidated it to 8 quick slides in the interest of time. Just kidding about the dozen slides. As we have discussed on a number of occasions, we have been looking at the capacity of the Sonoran Foothills and Union Park School. This is just some clipped information from the latest demographer's report showing that both Sonoran Foothills and Union Park are expected to be over capacity either next year or the following year, depending on the school. Back in December, this board approved an award with the Architect ADM Group, who was the original architect of record at both campuses, to prepare a proposal for adding classrooms at each of these locations. I think it's important to note that we are currently tracking a little over 5,000 multi-purpose home units in the region between Happy Valley and Carefree Highway east of I-17. And we are also experiencing some new housing development, the Copperleaf development just north of Sonoran Foothills, as well as the homes that are being built in the Union Park area. So in addition to the multi-purpose, I think it's maybe a little late.
Multifamily housing, is that what you mean?
Multifamily housing developments is what I mean to say. So this is just kind of an overview. The classroom addition would be just to the west of the existing multipurpose building, kind of in a linear fashion. It's shown here in kind of a light blue. This is just a little bit closer picture of it, just 4 standard classrooms to match the existing classrooms there, and then kind of a architect's rendering to match the existing blockwork in the lower right corner. At Union Park, it would be just to the west of the existing classroom building. 4 classrooms being added here with a restroom, a shared restroom between each of the 2, so kind of a hallway down the center of it. And you can see the architect's rendering in the lower left-hand corner here. Both schools did have a provision for expansion, and we are considering to traditionally build these, so they would be not portable buildings, but actually brick and mortar buildings that we're talking about. There has been some escalation of costs since we talked even in December. We originally thought we would do this for somewhere in the neighborhood of $2.8 million. If you add these 2 together, you get a little more than $3.5 million. So we are asking the board to consider a job order contract in excess of $1 million, which is important distinction. Board policy DJE does allow us a job order contract up to $1 million unless the board deems it in the best interest of the district to go in excess of $1 million. So we are asking the board to do that in both instances. The results-based funding will fund the Sonoran Foothills project with contributions from the voluntary developer donation fees, most notably with the Copperleaf development, the arrangement we reached with them. For Union Park, we will be using the 2019 bond. We have a growth category in that bond, and we'll be supplementing that with the voluntary developer donation fees within that particular region. As I mentioned, we awarded the architect back in December. Tonight is the formal consideration of both job order contract jocks that they are separate items on the agenda, just to be noted. We would, pending the outcome of those votes, we would issue the notice to proceed in May and anticipate completion of both projects at the conclusion of the first semester of next school year. And I'd be happy to answer any questions the board might have.
Any questions, board members? Okay. Hearing none, we'll just remind board members that this is a vote for the Sonoran Foothills job order contract. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Hearing none, passes unanimously.
Yes. I would ask that the governing board accept the administrator's recommendation to approve a construction job order contract number 1 GPA 1815 PV with Chase Building Team for classroom additions at Union Park School.
I second.
Any questions or discussion, board members? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, please say nay. Hearing, I'm sorry, what?
Did it hit the right one? Okay.
Okay,
Sorry,
passes.
it looked different.
No problem. Passes unanimously. Thank you for double checking, Mrs. Fisher.
I would ask that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to pre-approve the agenda as presented.
I second.
Any questions or discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, please say nay. Technology's a little slow on this one. And we
And we're off?
approved it unanimously. And the next item.
I would ask that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to approve the fiscal year 23 classroom site fund plan.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Mrs. Mock.
President O'Brien, members of the board, guests still with us in the room and maybe online. This is one of approximately 4 approvals that the governing board gives for the classroom site fund plan. Typically, Dr. Smith works with the committee to work specifically on the performance pay plan for certified and other professional staff paid out of classroom site fund plan. We will bring back the specific amount for this current school year being paid to certified and other professional staff out of classroom site fund. And last board meeting on April 12th, we did give a preview of the amount of classroom site fund that is going directly into teacher salaries when you approved the salary recommendation for 22-23. This plan, the fourth of all of those, really just memorializes the percent of the overall fund that's going into teacher-based salary and other professional staff-based salary, and the amount of that overall fund that is going into those groups' performance pay. All the way up until the current school year, we were required to split those funds a little bit differently, but legislation that began for the 21-22 school year actually made it a little bit easier to account for these funds. Deer Valley, out of the 3 funds that used to be required, Fund 11 for teacher-based pay, Fund 12 for teacher performance pay, and Fund 13 for other menu items, as it were. Deer Valley actually had Fund 13 and Fund 11 already in teacher base pay. So this made it much easier for us to account for those funds. And so for 21-22, and we're recommending again for 22-23, that 60% stays in teacher performance or teacher base pay and other professional staff base pay, and 40% of the overall allocation go into teacher and other professional staff performance pay.
Thank you, Mrs. Mock. Any questions or discussion, board members? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say nay. Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. Our next item, please.
I would ask that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to approve the fiscal year 2022-2023 employee salary schedules.
Mrs. Moffett.
I second.
Oh, sorry. We have a motion and a second. Mrs. Moffett, now it's your turn.
The salary schedules that you see in front of you reflect the board-approved salary recommendation from the last governing board meeting, and these are in the same format that you review on an annual basis. The approval of these schedules will allow the HR department to move forward with all of the hiring of our new staff.
I have one quick question. I just want to verify related to the classified hiring schedule. We took care of, I guess if you're starting at a certain salary or a certain range, that starting pay would not or cannot be higher than somebody that's in that range and has been in that range for several years. Yes, it can be. No, it cannot be. Okay, sorry. Mr. Miglerino.
Right.
Mrs. Moffett.
We are careful, maybe in previous years, many, many, many years ago, not so much in classified, but perhaps in other groups, but that is not currently the case, and that speaks to, I believe, Ms. Reed's question from the last governing board meeting, that we are careful when we are putting salary recommendations forward, that new hires are not coming in over our current employees with the same years of experience. And in the classified realm, we don't honor years of experience anyhow, just the base rate.
Right, so for classified, that, okay, if you're in the same range and have somebody with more years, somebody who's starting with our district in that range cannot start higher, Mr. Miglerino?
President O'Brien, members of the board, we've made adjustments to everybody in the range. I think what we have heard from some comments, and the classified staff have not received their appointments for next year, so they don't know exactly what the amount is. But in terms of, nobody will receive an amount greater than somebody with more years of service, but somebody with more years of service may not have the same differential from somebody that was starting before. So what we provided and what was improved in the salary recommendation was a flat hourly increase to everybody in the range. So, for example, in range 15, I think it's 14 cents. So somebody with 12 years of experience got the raise, the 6% raise, which was divided between a flat and a percentage increase, plus they got an additional 14 cents. The differential between what their final hourly rate of pay, which they have not seen yet, although it can be calculated, is going to be different than what the differential was to the starting pay in previous years. So it'll be less, but they're still getting a significant raise. It's just that the bottom has come up, and we've also increased theirs as well, but not by the same percentage.
Okay, thank you for.
So 14 cents on $15 is different than 14 cents on $12, right?
Absolutely. All right, thank you for that clarification. All right, anything else? Mrs. Fisher?
I just have one question. How many of these positions are new positions? Are there are any of these positions new positions?
President O'Brien, Ms. Fisher, there aren't any positions that are being approved. These are the hiring schedules
No, I understand that, but so every single one of these positions is a current existing, and this is their salary.
These are all current ranges or positions, so there aren't any new added positions to the list. But this is the beginning hiring range for that, so not the amount that we pay a person unless they happen to be new next year.
Right, I'm just verifying that there wasn't a new position that we're having a salary range that we, because it's a different issue, but we don't generally, every district I've ever worked in, all new positions are put before the board with a job description, and this is, and I just have never seen it in Deer Valley, so I'm just making sure that these aren't new positions. It's just the salaries of existing position ranges.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Fisher. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, please say nay. Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. So we will move on to item 8A, which is Governing Board Policy JFAA, admission of resident students, and we will go to Dr. Zerbach for that.
Thank you, President O'Brien, members of the board, Dr. Finch. I have two brief previews of two policies for you tonight. This is the first reading. The first, as you already have mentioned, is policy JFAA, and it has to do with the resident students, and then JFAB, which has to do with non-resident students. So the language is actually the same, President O'Brien, in both of these policies, but since one has to do with resident and one is non-resident, they are separate policies. As it states here, there is a Senate bill which is updating the type of identification that needs to be accepted, and so it has to do with biometric identification, and it includes there what that could entail, fingerprint identification or retina scans. And then, as I just mentioned, the same language then is included in JFAB for a non-resident, student. This is at the suggestion of ASBA, and we'll be bringing it back for a second read at the next board meeting.
Board members, questions? Okay, seeing none, if you change your mind, please feel free to email Dr. Finch prior to the next meeting. The next item for preview is to preview amendment number 7 to the IGA between Deer Valley Unified School District and the Maricopa County Library District for North Valley Regional Library at Boulder Creek High School. Shoo, that was a lot. And for that, we're going to go to Mr. Miglerino. Okay.
President O'Brien, members of the board, Dr. Finch, and I might call on Dr. Finch to assist with this. If you remember, about a year ago, I think it was June 21st of last year, we brought before the board a consideration to terminate the agreement that we had with the Maricopa County Library. That required a one-year notice, and what was included in that board decision was for us to take that 1 year's worth of time and try and work out an alternative agreement with the county library that is housed at on the Boulder Creek campus. And we're happy to report that through those discussions, which Dr. Finch has led, they have agreed to many of the changes that we have suggested were a requirement for us to continue the arrangement. And so what we bring before you as a preview item is the actual Seventh Amendment to the original intergovernmental agreement, which would allow the county library to remain on the Boulder Creek High School campus with a change in their hours of operation, which had actually been in place since January of this year. So they've agreed to alter their hours of keeping the county library open outside of the hours that we operate the school itself, and that has been in place and has worked successfully since January. This would memorialize that, as well as change a couple other components of the IGA. We had a monetary contribution that was part of the IGA for the collection itself. That is being removed. A couple other minor changes due to parking, just because of the congestion on the campus, and parking is such a premium. And again, it's not necessary for the library to have the parking if they're operating outside of the hours that we were, or that the school is operating. And so we've also shared with the county the planned improvements for all of our high schools, including the changes at Boulder Creek High School. And they are also in agreement with those changes as well. So we're excited to bring this, these changes because it helps memorialize this. It will improve the safety on the campus because we will not have the public commingling with students throughout the day. And that was one of the primary drivers for us to want to make some, to demand some of the changes that are included in this IGA. And we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Dr. Finch, did you have anything to add?
I think Jim hit most of it. Again, student safety was the number one issue. I've been working really for the last 5 years. I just wanted to thank Chairman Bill Gates, County Chair, put a lot of time into it. I know Ms. O'Brien as our chair also was involved as we talked to Anthem outlets and multiple different locations, looking at alternatives over the years, and then focus back in on safety at the campus and how we could run both simultaneously. So when they volunteered to move their hours to the PM, then everyone became the winner in that agreement. And then again, it's for another 5-year window. So happy to report that we reached the finish line with all parties being cooperative, helpful, and supportive of each other's decisions. And I think it worked out for the community and for Deer Valley.
Any questions, board members? Oh, Mrs. Fisher?
Do we have to lock 5 years?
Say that again?
Do we have to lock it into 5 years?
We can always back out. I think it's in the provision within a 1-year notice. So yes, it's 5 years until, unless we want to change it, we have to give them 1-year notice if we are going to evict them. We can always change the agreement as well at any time should circumstances change. But we would have to give notice for 1 year if we were talking about eviction.
I'm just not a fan of it being a full 5 years and without really knowing what the outcomes could be. I mean, I would prefer it be a shorter term, but that's it. I'm just thinking of the community. We can't project what's going to happen or predict what's going to happen. But I mean, it is what it is.
Okay, I don't see any additional questions at this time. And because it is a preview item, if you come up with some between now and the next meeting, please feel free to email them in. And with that, really sorry for that. We will move to governing board reports. Mrs. Paperman.
I would like to say that safety needs to be top priority in our district. So I am looking forward to see the emergency response plan. This has been, I'm sure, an experience, a learning experience for all of us, the community, students, staff, and hopefully that this will never happen again, that we will have a strong emergency response plan that everyone will know what to do in case of an emergency, a shooter, or a bomb threat. Also, I would like to thank you for those interventions that are being put in place because as a classroom teacher, we do need that support. We need students to get that extra support to be pulled out to work with Boys Town and then get them back in the classroom and for us to continue working with those standards and making sure that they are showing those growth and meeting educational goals. I also would like to congratulate all the individuals that got the awards. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Paperman. Mrs. Fisher?
I want to congratulate all the kids that, well, not only the ones that got their artwork selected, but the kids that are, and teachers and coaches and whatnot that are going to be awarded at the upcoming event. This would be the first one that I have missed as long as I've been on the board. But I'm going to New Orleans, so I will be with my mom and sisters just having fun. But I do want to congratulate them because that's one of the best events. The camaraderie and the growth and the benefit of athletics is just so apparent and at that event, and it's just such a positive event. I'm going to miss it, but I want to congratulate them. I have been watching, whether it's social media or news or political stuff or whatever. Someday I will write one heck of a book about school districts and having been a board member for a school district. I'm not sure exactly what direction that one's going to go, but I am just shocked at the things that I'm seeing, but they're so true. We hear about, kids bullying and the concerns, and we have the most loving people in education, and then you turn around and you have the biggest bullies in education, both adults and children. We have, one moment someone's screaming about indoctrination, and the next minute, someone saying, well, there is no indoctrination in schools. And then we have a teacher that's saying, well, I teach them my way because I just happen to know better. One day I get, you get a week worth of, I am a teacher who supports XYZ agenda and you don't, I hate you, go to many explicit places. And then the next week you get a parade of, we thank you for all you do, support our raise. And I don't think people realize how much the governing board does not have control over in some districts. Very little is actually brought to the board decision-wise that historically has always been. And as board members, we can't control that. If it's not on the agenda, we can't control that. If administration won't speak to us, we can't control that. It just is what it is. Until you have a board that goes one direction or the other or whatever, but the public needs to realize that that's just the way it is. If there is inaction, then it could be one of many areas. But the one thing that I think every board member, regardless of what side that you are on of anything, would agree is that we do have a responsibility, and that responsibility, one of the largest responsibilities, because policy really isn't. ASBA writes a policy, they give it to us, and 3/4 of the time the board just accepts it and never discusses it. Sometimes you have board members that stand up, but it's rare. But we do look a lot at finances and budget. And We have gone nonstop, year after year after year, where you have one group of teachers that's advocating really for them, and then you have another group of teachers that's saying, hey, wait a minute, what about me? We have classified saying, well, what about us? You have administrators saying, well, we don't pay our administrators enough. We need to pay them more because, they just, yes, we are the district that has the highest administrative cost of all of our true peer districts, but we need to pay our administrators more. And at the end of the day, it comes here and we are told, well, NST decided this and it's recommended, so just accept it. I am asking that this board actually have a study session where we discuss what the heck is going on when it comes to pay. I would like to have the scatter plot applied not only to our certified, but also to our classified. And I would like to see a real job study of like positions, not just within the education, but within similar positions within industries. Because if you're going to lose a really awesome secretary, you're not going to lose it to another school district. You're going to lose it to corporate that's going to pay them 4 times as much. Granted, I know we can't pay that, but I think we need to start taking a real look at what we're doing with our pay, and that is our responsibility, is to look at those real dollars. So it's an ask that we actually take this serious and look at it the way we did many years ago, even if that bruises some people's feelings, because back then it did. In the watching stuff, I have gotten, and I'm not going to beat up with the concerns because we've talked about a lot of them, but the concerns I received this week obviously were the Boulder Creek situation. Special education has been repeatedly. Bullying, which is something we hear all the time, and for those who don't understand, we have zero control. We are not in the classroom. I don't know a single board member that has ever gone to, or at least not in Deer Valley, I don't know a single board member that has ever gone to a principal and said, you're going to do this with this kid because of this. It just doesn't happen. We don't have that authority. But one concern I have that was brought to me that just shocked me was parents complaining that they're being bullied for speaking up for their kid. And I think we really need to address that. It's parents are the advocate for their kid, and we cannot just dismiss them and worse, we can't punish them for advocating for their kid. Oh, you're going to stand up for your kid, you're banned. We don't speak to you. That's just problematic. The concern was a dismissive attitude towards parents and community from leaders, specific leaders, one of which I will, I don't know if I should speak up and inform you of something that's coming, or if the parent's actually going to. Like I said, I don't have someone to speak to on these issues within the district. And I don't know if this parent is going to go to the state or if they're going to go to us, but it's a significant concern. And so let me know who I should go to for that, to discuss it, or just to give you the information. I just want to make it clear to the people that are watching, because that they're the ones that bring this stuff forward. Governing board members do the best we can, but there are some things we just can't fix. And it just depends on, for everything that is done, you have to have 3. That old joke of superintendents have to count to 3, it's not a joke, it's a reality. They only have to count to 3. They don't have to have any information or knowledge or anything. They just have to count to 3. And then they have a control over a board. And so talk to us anyways. We'll do the best we can. But we can't fix everything as much as we would like to. That's it. Thanks.
Mrs. Reed?
Wow, gee, I don't know how to follow that up. I guess I'll start with positive stories. One of the really unique opportunities that I have in the job that pays money is working with some of our students, our Deer Valley students, and sorry. And we had 3 Deer Valley Unified School District students that won scholarships from Chick-fil-A this year. And after not really being able to celebrate them last year, or the last 2 years with the pandemic, we were able to surprise them at school with their parents and their principals and their and award them with their scholarships, which is really neat. And so we had 2 students from Sandra Day O'Connor and 1 student from Barry Goldwater High School. Dr. Miller called the students in, and they both thought they were in trouble and were trying to rack their brains and figure out what in the world they did, that they were getting escorted to the office by I think it was the SRO and the assistant principal. And then when we were walking into Barry Goldwater, Dr. Zerbach was there doing a school visit, so he was able to accompany us and be in the room when we presented the student. So those are some really priceless moments the last 2 weeks. In my job that also pays money, I'm leading our hospitality leadership, so about 30 team leaders, in a book called The Power of Moments. And the book is really near and dear to my heart because we have the opportunity to author peak moments in our students' lives, and especially at this time of year with award ceremonies and promotions and graduations and teachers retiring and moving on, to really thank them and celebrate and honor all that they've done in Deer Valley. And so I just want to kind of shout that out, that as we're doing that, just remember to be in the moment with your students, and remember that it's not always, the peak moments aren't always the top of the class winners or the straight A students. There's some peak moments that can be created in between for the student who graduated out of Math 180, or the student who maybe got a C instead of a D. I mean, there's some really peak moments that are created all throughout the educational environment. To kind of piggyback on something that Mrs. Fisher said about bullying, we did receive some emails about bullying, and there was a lot of chatter on social media about it. And we live in this environment that's been created over the last 3 years where it's okay to write or to say anything that you think and post it on social media or be a keyboard warrior. And adults have been doing it. Kids see their parents doing it or talking about other people. We've had elected officials do it all the way from the top down. And it's created a very negative environment, and our kids are bringing it into the classroom, and our teachers are having to deal with it without all of the resources necessary that I think that they need to have. And it's really important to understand for all of us that in order to solve bullying, it is a partnership between school and home. And it's monitoring what your kids post on social media. It's checking their phones, the Bark app, having things on there and having tough conversations with your kids. Talking to them about how, sarcasm and how sarcasm can be taken, the wrong way when you mean it one way. I think that our kids have lost their voice and I think it's easy to read into things that are typed or written because you can't see somebody's facial expressions or intonation. And I think that principals and teachers want to stop bullying with everything that they have, but it's a partnership that we, as parents, we need to do our part too. And having kids that have been on both sides, my kids aren't perfect and they bully one another all the time. It's just sibling rivalry. But having kids that have been picked on and then getting the phone call that my kid was the one that was picking on somebody else, we have tough conversations, and I hold my kids to task and hold them accountable for behavior, and I expect them to stand up and report bullying behavior at school. But I think it's really important that as parents, you know how to report that behavior, and you can report that on the school district and the school's website if you see that, and to make sure that we're having honest conversations with school staff too. And when I've gotten calls from assistant principals, I don't ever, I believe what they say about my kid. I know that my kid's not perfect. And, I give my kid the benefit of the doubt until we get home and we can talk about it. But, I know that, if the assistant principal needed to call me to tell me something about my student, that there was a real big reason why he needed to pick up the phone and call me. So I'm just asking that we all come together and come to the table to try and fix the problem that surrounds bullying. And it starts with us and watching what we post and watching what we say about others and around our kids. So I'll leave that at that. Something that's really exciting next week is Teacher Appreciation Week, which is one of my favorite weeks out of the whole school year. So I'm really excited to see all of the ways that PTSAs and principals and the district and students and parents and our community honor some of the hardest working teachers in the state of Arizona. And not just teachers, but staff members. Our classified staff works just as hard, and our teachers wouldn't be able to do anything without that partnership that they have with our classified staff. So thank you for all that you do. I really appreciate it. I know how hard the last 3 years have been. I know how hard this school year has been. Who would have thought that year 3 would be the hardest, right? But I appreciate everything, and happy Teacher and Staff Appreciation Week, and happy School Nurse Week too, or Nurses Week. It's important. And School Lunch Week is the same. Yeah, so there's a lot to celebrate next week. But thank you for all that you do.
Mrs. Ordway?
Well, I wanted to say congratulations to all those students who received their acceptance to their CTE electives. There's been a lot of joy going around. Fine arts accomplishments are going on for one and all to attend. I hope you have time, whether it's dance. I think plays might be over, but there's a lot of concerts left. I know that Mountain Ridge is doing their last concert, so there's a lot of stuff to experience. Same thing with athletics, and I'm sure Dr. Finch will go into maybe more detail than Dr. Zerbak had already gone in, but there's plenty of student things to watch. The prom, calling all fairy godmothers and the prom wear for the ladies and the gentlemen went off well. Got some pictures, post them soon. And the next chapter is May 3rd, next Tuesday from 5 to 6:30 for our 8th graders across the district. They can come to Barry Goldwater and pick out a prom dress, and I've got slacks also, so that's very exciting. Barry Goldwater next week has, I believe, their senior institute, maybe like their honors things going on, and then everybody else has that going on. Senior moments going all around, and not the kind of senior moments of the people that are sitting here. I mean the senior moments for the students. So I'm just very excited. It's the last couple of weeks of school. It's filled with a lot of things to do, and I guess we'll have to finish strong.
Wonderful, thank you so much. I was able to participate in a panel presentation with the WestEd Board of Directors, and the topic was rethinking the role of assessments in high-stakes admission decisions. And they had 4 panelists from across the United States, and it was an interesting discussion. But the biggest takeaway moment, because Deer Valley's been doing the ACT, and I'm looking for some affirmation, for a few years for all of our juniors, correct? Was to hear some of these folks talk about that we need to be doing that. And I was like, oh yes, Deer Valley's ahead once again, because it does let some students know that they are on, they could be on a university path, that they can do it. And so there was other interesting aspects to it, but it was nice, that one little takeaway I thought I would share with you all. I am excited about May, because May is all of our great celebrations, whether it's 8th grade promotions or awards banquets, pursuing victory with honor, as Mrs. Fisher talked about, and the high schools, and ultimately then, right, the culmination of our graduation. So I hope everybody will live in the moment and enjoy all these moments. Most of them are once in a lifetime moments. So I think it's important for us to stop and smell the roses as we go through this. And I have some exciting news. I don't have names, but I'll have those next meeting, is that the City of Phoenix honors young men and young women from across the city. There's a young man and young woman identified in each of the 8 districts. And I'm excited to announce that Barry Goldwater High School has not only the winner for the young woman of District 1, but they also have the winner for the young woman of District 2. So they'll be honored because of our boundaries, and I maybe even open enrollment. I'm not sure, but I'm so excited. We have 2 winners. That there's a celebration, I think in the next week or so, or 10 days. But and we've talked to Monica about honoring them here, hopefully before they graduate and go off doing all their wonderful things. But that's super exciting. I hope our principals will push that out. Our high school principals will push that out next year, because it's just such an incredible honor. And I know we have extraordinary young women and young men in our district. So that's awesome. And would like to thank Mrs. Ordway for continuing her fairy godmothers for both proms, as well as the 8th grade promotions and 8th grade dances that I think are coming. I think that's excellent work. And with that, I'm going to say Dr. Finch.
All righty.
Oh, wait, one more. You
One more?
didn't start quick
You're
enough.
cutting in
This
the
is a point of personal privilege. I haven't been to many sports events. Life's been a little crazy with that paying job thing going on. But tonight I got to catch the girls softball game between Stetson Hills and Gavilan Peak, and it was within a run until the very last inning. So that was a really exciting game, and congratulations to the Stetson Hills girls that'll be moving on. All right, thank you.
Oh, did you just congratulate Stetson Hill girls? I mean, where'd that come from, neighborhood woman?
Yes. I also, as am a sports person and enjoy the camaraderie, problem-solving, teamwork that comes from sport. So I try to get out as many events as I can. As you know, there is an event of some kind in our district every night. So Mrs. Finch has an opinion on this participation, this high level of participation. In fact, I drove last night all the way down to Castile, which is at the end of the earth. Almost. 17 miles of stoplights once you get off the freeway. It's out in the middle of nowhere. In fact, I ran into the director of AIA at the beach, competition for volleyball, and told him, Mr. Miglorino, and I quote, 2 years ago, I brought Mr. Miglorino to this site because I want to create it in Deer Valley so we can have the state events here. So since then, he's been spending all my money, so I don't have any left. So I'm working on it. So that could be a Dr. Galligan problem, though. That's another issue. But The short version is our O'Connor girls did beat Corona del Sol in the semis, and they will be playing for the state title tomorrow at the end of the year, Castile High School, at 7 p.m. Wednesday. And they will be playing Xavier Prep, which they have beaten this year quite handily. So we'll see how it goes. As you know, getting over the last hump is always the hardest. So, and I do want a signed volleyball from all the kids to put on my shelf to go with my other 4 state titles that are there. Representative Judy Swibert was here visiting our Vista Peak and Esperanza, our 2 schools. Did a nice job to catch up with her on what we do and how we do it and why we do it. And that's important for legislators to see that. So periodically we get requests from legislators to come visit our schools. Usually around November we get more requests than before. Last but not least, along the same line, as you know, I'm pretty busy with EFRG and ASA to work on legislation as our legislators are keeping us busy. So stay tuned with the ASBA notices that come out that keep you in the loop. And if you have any thoughts, make sure you let me know. If you need me to tackle or push a certain perspective, I would be interested in that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Finch. And one last thing. This week is Administrative Professionals Week. So we want to thank Mrs. Taylor for your wonderfully, incredibly, extraordinary work keeping us all going. Oh, no, you don't want us. Well, you don't want me to sing. So please, you are the backbone. So thank you so much for all that you are doing for us and continue to do for us. And with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn at 10:26. Motion and a second. All in favor? Say aye. Aye. I'm pretty sure that passed unanimously. I'm not even asking for nays.